Chapter 381. Exercise muscles and bones, show your skills. Xiao Junyi may be only a second-order supernatural ability user, but as the daughter of the bureau chief, she had access to more information than the average member. She was even privy to some secrets. She had heard of rare geniuses capable of utilizing 2 to 3 supernatural abilities, but even then, they merely knew how to use them rather than mastered them. The idea of someone like Bai Hongtu, who could unleash a power on par with a 4th-order ability, or even stronger, with just a single finger, was a concept that she wouldn't even dare to think, let alone hear of. Moreover, this person named Bai Hongtu had the ability to regenerate from a single drop of blood, dying and then instantly coming back to life. This was simply beyond her scope of understanding. She secretly relayed this information to her father. "You said that you can do something like primordial spirit ascension. What does primordial spirit mean?" Xiao Junyi had never heard of this term. "It's the congenital divine energy that comes with birth. No point trying to simplify it for you, let me show you instead." Bai Hongtu closed his eyes, with white mist rising from the top of his head, forming a primordial spirit that turned into dazzling light and traveled thousands of miles. Shortly after, Bai Hongtu's primordial spirit returned, holding a blue fruit in its hand. At the divinity transformation stage, one could achieve primordial spirit ascension, but they could only roam around at that stage, fearing sunlight, and were unable to carry anything, so there were quite a few drawbacks. But the primordial spirit at the transcendence tribulation stage could overcome these shortcomings. What I have here is the blue dream fruit, from 2,000 miles south. It must be eaten within an hour of picking, otherwise it will rot. It's a fruit that only locals can taste. Xiao Junyi had once been to that place and tasted the blue dream fruit, the flavor of which had left a deep impression on her. Peng Lionhai had also not expected Bai Hongtu to be that strong. "In just a few minutes, you were able to travel 8,000 miles. Xiao Junyi gawked at Bai Hongtu as if she was seeing a monster. His abilities were beyond any supernatural power she could fathom. This could no longer be described as a supernatural power, it was more appropriate to call it a miracle. "I was actually moving slow." Bai Hongtu's primordial spirit waved its hand, then returned to its body. "Wait, what? Someone was able to regenerate from blood, display multiple supernatural abilities, and move at high speed, irrespective of obstacles." Xiao Junyi's father immediately stood up. If it weren't for the fact that this was relayed to him by his own daughter, he would have believed someone was fooling him. Xiao Junyi's father rushed to the monitoring room, extracted the surveillance footage, and watched Bai Hongtu's performance, which did not differ much from his daughter's account. Who exactly is this person? Xiao Junyi's father initially suspected that Bai Hongtu was dispatched by some heretical organization, but quickly ruled out that possibility. The person's strength was immeasurable and it was unlikely that a heretical organization would send someone so conspicuous. By the way, what did he say his supernatural ability was? Xiao Junyi's father called over 2 supernatural ability users who could detect lies and asked them about his account. Cultivation. At first, Xiao Junyi's father found the term vaguely familiar but could not recall where he had heard it. It didn't take him long to remember and he widened his eyes in shock. Cultivation. He had read about cultivation in an ancient text. The text stated that in an age of uncivilized culture, a supernatural ability user far more powerful than the 5th order was born. His ability was his eyes, or rather the ability to see far-off places. This ancient supernatural ability user's vision pierced through the universe and world barriers, allowing him to behold the sights of another world. The continents in that world were vast, with monsters roaring in the sky, celestial beings who could pick stars and catch moons, traversing the universe at will. There were many celestial beings who could casually tear space apart. The abilities that these supernatural ability users painstakingly master their whole life were nothing but common attacks in their hands. The ancient supernatural ability user also saw that after certain individuals endured the heavenly tribulation, they bathed in golden light, ascended a golden ladder, and disappeared from sight. He wanted to see what was above the golden ladder, but his vision had its limits and he could not see it all. The ancient supernatural ability user soon lost his sight from overusing his ability, and could no longer see that other world. The text further stated that before he died, the ancient supernatural ability user kept muttering, "Cultivation, the 9 provinces in my next life, I really want to go to that world." This ancient text was treated as a fantasy novel, a joke made by ancient people. No one took it seriously, let alone studied it. It was hard to believe that any creature could be that powerful. If what was mentioned in the text was true, does that mean the methods they used to train their supernatural abilities were wrong? It was extremely hard for supernatural ability users to learn to control an ability such as fire. Could it be that there are people for whom controlling fire, gold, wood, water, and earth are as easy as waving their hands? Doesn't this render all of the efforts of these supernatural ability users a joke? Could the information in the ancient text actually be true? What's next in the test? Bai Hongtu asked, excitedly flexing his muscles, ready to continue showing off. The next is testing strength. That's easy, I can lift a barbell of any weight. Then how about arm wrestling with him? Xiao Junyi pointed to Zhang Li. Bai Hongtu went stiff, his smile freezing on his face. Zhang Li was also excited and full of energy, ready to go. He rolled up his sleeves, putting his arm on the table and said, "Come." Bai Hongtu reluctantly placed his arm on the table too. Seeing the two of them ready, Xiao Junyi waved her hand and called out, "Begin." Bai Hongtu slowly closed his eyes and emptied his mind. He imagined himself floating through endless space, his body weightless. At this moment, he thought of his rough journey, of his pride and joy when he became the sect master of the Tao sect, the many preparations he made to defeat Zhang Li, the meetings he had with other powerful beings to discuss how to defeat Zhang Li, the earnest teachings of the long-lived old man, and his carefree childhood days. Bai Hongtu opened his eyes suddenly, his gaze piercing, his aura full of intimidation. I carry the hopes of many people on my shoulders. I cannot lose, Zhang Li, I will defeat you. Boom. Bai Hongtu was forced down into the ground by Zhang Li, unable to even rise back up. That's not right. Don't they always say in books that when facing an invincible enemy, by reflecting on the past, one can achieve a breakthrough on the battlefield, surpassing oneself and defeating the enemy? It seems your strength is not as exaggerated as I believed. Seeing that Bai Hongtu finally showed a weakness, Xiao Junyi breathed a sigh of relief. She had previously thought that Bai Hongtu was invincible. On that note, didn't someone proclaim themselves as unbeatable before? The next is the final test, combat simulation. Xiao Junyi took the three of them to the combat training ground. Here, third-order supernatural ability users would act as instructors to test the abilities of newcomers. Speak, what is your heretic cult planning in Sea City? In the interrogation room, two interrogators fiercely beat the heretical cult member captured by Peng Lianghai. The two interrogators were panting heavily, while the captured heretic cult member remained stubbornly silent despite the traumatic punishment. The heretic cult member sneered coldly and said, "Why would I ever reveal our heretic cult's no, our supernatural ability God Church's plan to you? To be honest, your companion has already confessed. If you confess now and considering that you have behaved well, we could let you off. Will you spare my life? We will leave your body intact. You have killed countless people, and you are still hoping to live. Let me tell you, no one who enters this interrogation room has ever come out alive." The cult disciple was silent for a moment, then asked, "But I have seen you guys coming out of here many times." Beat him mercilessly. Chapter 382, Scream. The members of the Power Church felt that the people of the Banhai branch were truly unreasonable. From time immemorial, courtesy called for reciprocity. You didn't even use the honey trap, and you still expected me to tell the truth. What sort of deal did they think this was in the world? I confess, resigned himself the Power Church member, having given up the hope of seeing a honey trap. It would be better to confess. Looking at the time, it was about time for the members of the Power Church to act, whether he spoke up or not hardly mattered now. I'll be honest with you. We've infiltrated your Banhai branch so thoroughly, it's like a sieve. Guess how many of your people are my comrades? The two interrogators scoffed, thinking that the prisoner was resorting to alarmist talk. However, they soon lost their smiles. The person under interrogation began to reveal many details that only the Banhai branch would know, some of which even they were unaware of. The interrogators broke out into a cold sweat, drenching their clothes. Their first reaction was to report this to Xiao Junyi's father. But they discovered that the internal phone lines had been severed and the doors locked from the outside. They had no way to communicate with the outside world. Meanwhile, the man under interrogation was leisurely divulging details of the organization's plan. Your Banhai branch only has 6 fourth-level superpowered individuals. However, guess how many of your higher-ups will survive if these 6 make a move? Apart from that, we have our people among the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st-level superpowered individuals, and there are quite a few of them. It has already been decided that today, at this very moment, we will retaliate against the Banhai branch. This will be the first battle to sound the call to arms. After the Banhai branch is taken care of, our next step is to attack the headquarters of the Superpower User Management Bureau. For this battle, our headquarters has expended a lot of resources, deploying numerous superpowered individuals to ensure the success of this operation. You're looking for death. With their eyes bloodshot, the two interrogators made a move to kill the man. The man smiled, easily broke free from the handcuffs, and subdued both men. How is this possible? Oh, didn't I tell you? My power is, become stronger when hit, a branch of the enhancement line. At the sight of their hopeless faces, the man's joy knew no bounds. Here's another piece of free information. We have our people among your instructors as well. The higher-ups' plan is for the instructors to kill the newcomers, thus signifying the start of the battle. 3 newcomers should be coming for testing today. Good, they will surely be remembered by our Power Church. One of the interrogators was surprised. The Power Church member had been locked in here and couldn't possibly know what was happening outside unless someone had told him. In disbelief, he turned to his partner, who wore a cruel smirk on his face. After some consideration, the interrogator also put on a cruel smirk to blend in, saying, "Actually, I am also from the Power Church." All 3 of them in the interrogation room shared cruel smirks, reducing the room temperature by several degrees. How should we get out? Wait for someone to rescue us. Xiao Junyi and the 3 others entered the training room, causing many people to put down their work and focus on what was happening in the training room. Hey, the newcomers these days surely like to play coy. So what if you have some cultivation power? In my eyes, you're just a slightly talented genius in illusions. That's all there is to it, scoffed the instructor. He planned, as per the orders from above, to kill the 3 newcomers by unnatural means. This is Ma Shu, a 3rd-level superpower user. He's able to manipulate gravity within a small range, which makes him formidable. He's proficient in several types of martial arts. Confronted with heavy gravity, your movements will be sluggish while he moves freely, making him a formidable foe in close combat. Ma Shu even has a record of defeating 4th-level superpower users by having 3rd-level powers. He ranks among the top 5 in the Banhai branch when it comes to practical combat. Peng Lianhai, while you are the unparalleled combat power enhancer, you will struggle to move under multiple times gravity. Be careful. Who wants to go first? Ma Shu was tall and robust, towering 2 meters high. Just standing there radiated a feeling of oppression to Peng Lianhai. While Ma Shu appeared friendly on the surface, inside, he was plotting to torture these 4 individuals. Even Xiao Junyi was on Ma Shu's hit list. Few knew, but Ma Shu was not a 3rd-level superpower user, he was actually a terrifying 4th-level one. He had been biding his time in the Banhai branch, acting like a fool with the newcomers, all for the sake of the attack on the Banhai branch today. He had been arranging for members of the Power Church to join while flipping several members of the Superpower User Management Bureau, and waiting for more than a decade. Today, he would no longer have to hold back. It was time to let loose. Ma Shu was confident that his showing off his 3rd-level gravity control could already rank him among the top 5 in the Banhai branch. So, his actual power, the 4th-level gravity, would surely have no match among all superpower users when facing one-on-one. Who wants to go first? Ma Shu stealthily locked the room door. No one could escape now. Peng Lianhai was enticed by Xiao Junyi's introduction. He wanted to fight with Ma Shu. I'll do it. Bai Hongtu jumped in before Peng Lianhai could get a word in. What's your name? Ma Shu asked. Bai Hongtu. I will remember this name. Ma Shu spread his arms. The atmosphere of the entire training room became heavy. Pressure weighted down from all directions, bearing down on everyone. The crowd was frightened, they could feel an intense pressure emanating from Ma Shu. Peng Lianhai looked horrified, he never expected the gap between Ma Shu and him to be so vast, it seemed the Banhai branch truly was full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. As he circulated his power at high speed, the friction generated heat in his muscles and his bones creaked under the strain. The fear in Xiao Junyi's eyes was palpable. This move of Ma Shu's was definitely not a test for the newcomers, it was not a 3rd-level superpower at all. She quickly connected the dots. Ma Shu was hiding his power. Why was he hiding his power all this time and why expose it now? Xiao Junyi realized that something big was going to happen. Zhang Li looked terrified and let out a yawn. Bai Hongtu was so terrified that he had to stretch. Die. Ma Shu threw a punch as fast as lightning and as mighty as a meteor strike. Peng Lianhai knew he wouldn't be able to take that punch. It's the meteor punch, Xiao Junyi exclaimed in shock. She never expected Ma Shu to play his killing card right away, a move he had used to defeat a 4th-level superpower user as a 3rd-level one. Watch out, but Bai Hongtu kicked Ma Shu away before he could land his punch. Bai Hongtu muttered, what a joke, the meteor punch, who the hell calls this power a meteor's impact? The power of my dandruff is even stronger than this. Ma Shu was left clueless, unable to work out where his plan had gone wrong. How could he have been defeated? Could it be that the other party was not an illusion-type superpower user? This is impossible. You forced me to do this. Ma Shu decided to put all his cards on the table and use his hidden tactics. But before he could make a move, Bai Hongtu booted him into a wall again. Ma Shu was stunned. He thought that his opponent was not following the code of conduct of martial artists. Bai Hongtu didn't care. He reined in his power and gave Ma Shu a good thrashing. Ma Shu was left screaming in pain. He wanted to open the door, but on investigating the lock, he found it had been tampered with by some bastard. His screams echoed through the small slits in the door, reverberating for a long time. Shish, what a tragic scream. It seems Ma Shu has started. We should also get moving. The members of the Power Church sprung into action. Chapter 383. Various types of superpowers. Rumble. From the outside, the Shao Corporation building was just gently swaying. However, the ordinary employees inside felt as if an earthquake had struck, and they ran out of the building one after another. What are you doing? A member of the seaside office was caught off guard by a sudden attack from a colleague and was thrown into disarray. His superhuman ability was similar to that of a gecko, allowing him to crawl on walls. Shocked by the attack, he swiftly clambered up the wall, using both his hands and feet. Killing you. The Super Ability Association members abandoned their pretense and launched a full-on assault on the seaside office member. I can't believe you've been an undercover agent for the Super Ability Association all along. We joined the seaside office at the same time. The realization hit the seaside office member like a ton of bricks. He couldn't believe that someone he had known for many years was an enemy. No, I was originally a part of the seaside office, but they treated me terribly, forcing me to turn to the Super Ability Association. Every time I use my ability, I have to get approval from the leadership and go through a series of procedures. Nobody else has to deal with this much hassle. Why should I have to endure such limitations? I won't stand for it. The Super Ability Association member showed a look of resentment and felt deeply wronged by the seaside office. He was persuaded to join the Super Ability Association by others. The seaside office member was in a bind, but your ability is X-ray vision, and you're a lecher. If we don't limit you, who should we limit? The Super Ability Association member was furious. If I don't peep, I'm wasting my ability. After calming down, the seaside office member remembered that his companion's X-ray vision had no offensive power. What am I afraid of you for? You can't beat me, he relaxed. The Super Ability Association member slowly drew a gun from his pocket. The seaside office member was so scared that he continued to climb the wall to escape. This is Xiao Sen's office. According to credible information, he's in there. Xiao Sen is the father of Xiao Junyi. A few powerful members of the Super Ability Association sneaked over here, ready to catch the leader first to weaken the enemy. Before entering the office, one person said a grave expression. Xiao Sen is a fourth-tier superhuman. His strength is unfathomable. Although no one has seen him take action, his position as the president of the leading company in Sea City, a world-renowned jewel tycoon, and the head of the seaside office attest to his strength. The fact that the other unruly fourth-tier superhumans are willing to recognize him as their leader shows his strength. As members of the association, we should be ready to sacrifice ourselves for the divine. Captain, don't worry, we are ready to devote ourselves to the divine. The members of the Super Ability Association had fanatic expressions in their eyes. The captain comforted everyone. The Super Ability Association will not let you suffer. The association has already taken out an accidental injury insurance policy for all of us. If we get injured, we can receive a hefty sum. To devote ourselves to the divine. To devote ourselves to the divine. The captain touched the alloy door. A thick layer of ice quickly formed on it, and when the captain grabbed it, the ice squeezed inward, reducing the door's size by a few circles, detaching it from the frame. The captain pushed open the door, a cone of ice forming in his hands targeted at Xiao Sen. The other superhumans also started demonstrating their powers, hardening their skin, controlling space, shooting lasers from their eyes, crouching down like a ferocious tiger. The captain sneered, "Director Xiao, you are surrounded. Surrender immediately and use the intercom to inform your people to drop their weapons. We, the Super Ability Association, guarantee that we won't kill a single person." Facing the unfathomable Director Xiao, the captain forced a smile, hoping that Director Xiao would do as he instructed. The most terrifying enemy is the unknown one. Director Xiao stood with his hands behind his back, looking out the window. He sighed softly, turning to face the people of the Super Ability Association. Director Xiao was a mature and attractive middle-aged man, impeccably dressed, his shoes shining, his hair perfectly combed. How much does the Super Ability Association pay you per year? I'll pay 20 times that. Do you think I will believe your words? The captain sneered. Director Xiao calmly replied, do you know what my superhuman ability is? He pulled out a pencil, drew out the lead, and exerted a little force. Unbelievable, the lead actually turned into gold. My superhuman ability is stone to gold. The captain exclaimed, don't think about turning my faith in the divine with money. He then turned to his teammates, isn't that right? The members all directed their attacks at the captain. The captain was forced to surrender. Director Xiao secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He may have seemed calm, but he was panicking inside. The fact that he was staring blankly out the window was a clear indication of that. This was below ground, there was no window to look out of. Although Director Xiao was adept at fighting, he couldn't take on so many people at once. Him having attained his current status, and getting the recognition from other fourth-tier superhumans, all came down to his stone-to-gold ability. The Super Ability Association is aggressive, and the others may have a difficult time resisting, he muttered. Facing the combined attack of two fourth-tier superhumans from the Super Ability Association, Hong Ming, a third-tier superhuman from the seaside office, showed not a hint of panic. So, you're here to kill me? Hey, a mere third-tier superhuman dares to be so arrogant. Do you know what my superhuman ability is? What? Controlling life and death. The two Super Ability Association members gasped in shock. The power to control life and death was a terrifying superhuman ability by name alone. They were immediately puzzled. According to the information provided by the mole, there was no superhuman named Hong Ming on the danger list. After exchanging a glance, the two members realized the truth. They had drawn the short stick. This Hong Ming was probably Seaside Office's trump card. Die. After Hong Ming shouted, he activated his superhuman ability and immediately died. As the two people moved closer to examine the situation, a foul stench of decay emanated from Hong Ming's body, making them nauseous. Without giving it another thought, they fled from the scene. After quite a while, Hong Ming revived, looking as if he had had a narrow escape from death. Thankfully, I upgraded my ability to third tier, which allows me to emit a strong stench quickly. His ability only allowed him to control his own life and death. Ha ha ha, I don't think anyone can stop me today. A Super Ability Association member laughed riotously, causing the Seaside Office members present to evade him. Damn, his ability is to manifest his spoken will, and it has already reached third tier. I am incredibly powerful. After the Super Ability Association member finished his sentence, his muscles bulged, and he easily punched through the wall. I am invulnerable. The Super Ability Association member charged forward like a rhino, with no object capable of halting his momentum. One of the members from the Seaside Office stepped forward and gestured at the Super Ability Association member, shut up. The Super Ability Association member suddenly found that he couldn't open his mouth. His colleagues began to question him, is your superhuman ability also to manifest your spoken will? I didn't know you were this powerful. I knew you were lying about being a first-tier superhuman. No, I really am a first-tier superhuman. My superhuman ability is to make people shut up. This person finally felt satisfied, his seemingly insignificant ability had finally been useful. There are constraints among superhuman abilities. If used correctly, even a first-tier superhuman can defeat a third-tier superhuman. Don't you think we got too excited too early? Someone asked suddenly. What do you mean? His ability makes people shut up, but the effect of the previous command is still in place. Everyone then realized what he meant, and they turned to see the Super Ability Association member, his eyes bloodshot, charging towards them. Oh my, we'd better run. Chapter 384. My name is Zhang Li, I am the new recruit. Suffocate and die, a member of the Superpower Church shouted, unleashing his supernatural ability. His power was to control gas, which could suck air from his surroundings and create a vacuum. But he soon couldn't yell anymore. Cough, cough, cough. His power was too overwhelming, he had inadvertently included himself within its range. Luckily, he quickly realized his mistake and turned off his ability. I am a 4th level superpower user, you bunch of 1st and 2nd levels dare to attack me. A high-level executive from the coastal branch showed no fear to the people surrounding him. A 4th level superpower user, who are you trying to scare? Don't think I don't know. It's all in the information, you're only a healer in the 4th level, a waste when you're alone. Who told you healers don't have attacking power? You mean while healing and attacking? Ridiculous, over a dozen of us attacking you together, your healing ability however fast is no use. The man from the superpower church was full of confidence, obviously having done his research. The 4th level healing superpower user smile. Oh, is that so? Of course, why has my voice changed? The man from the superpower church wanted to mock but then realized his deep baritone was changing, becoming shrill and feminine. I have reduced the production of male hormones in your body while increasing your female hormones production sharply. Can you guess what will happen next? The members of the superpower church discovered their voices were changing as well and began to beg for mercy out of fear. Inside the room, the light fluctuated between bright and dark, making the faces of the people unusually terrifying. My power is to control darkness and light. I am the god of darkness and the god of light. A member of the superpower church manipulated the room lighting at will, creating a terrifying ambience. By declaring himself as the god of darkness and the god of light, he made himself seem more mysterious. A man from the coastal branch couldn't help but ask, "But why do you keep turning on and off the lights?" A superpower church member stubbornly said, "I am the god of darkness and the god of light." Resigned, one of the coastal branch's members unleashed his powers, trying to subdue the superpower church member. Suddenly, the room darkened, only the flash of electricity could be seen. When the room lights came back on, only the superpower church member was standing, and the coastal branch man was convulsing from the electric shock. It serves you right to be electrocuted for telling the truth. This superpower church member's ability was actually to control electricity. In general, the superpower church had the upper hand. For this day, the superpower church prepared for many years. With the support of their headquarters, the situation was heavily in their favor. The members of the coastal branch could not react in time and were short-staffed. They ended up being at a disadvantage for a period of time. Just as there are numerous spells in the 9 provinces world that can't all be enumerated, so are the diverse superpowers in Waigu world. The levels of superpowers can generally be aligned with the spells used within cultivation stages. First-level superpowers correspond to spells used during Chi cultivation stage, second-level superpowers correspond to spells used during foundation establishment stage, and so on. But spells can be varied. Some spells have no offensive power at all, which applies the same for superpower users. This leads to the uncertainty of superpowers being very high. The level of power doesn't represent everything. There are countless examples where low-level superpowers have defeated high-level superpowers. The silence ability restraining the speak-out spell is a classic example. Of course, if the silence ability is elevated to 3rd or 4th level, it can still only make the other person silent, and still won't be able to defeat 1st or 2nd level enhancement type superpower users. Zhang Li was watching everything in the coastal branch with his divine sense. He found the way these superpower users used their abilities to be quite amusing. Alright, stop messing around, let's start the rescue. Zhang Li stopped by Hongtu, who was still beating up Ma Shu. Ma Shu was screaming continuously. The people from the superpower church thought it was the screams of a newcomer and thought that the newcomer had strong lung power. Something has happened. Something must have happened in the coastal branch. Xiao Junyi asked Zhang Li and Bai Hongtu for help. She tried to connect with her father only to find that all the internal communication lines in the coastal branch had been destroyed, the wireless signal was blocked, and they were trapped in a training room and couldn't even get out. And this Ma Shu, he had hidden his 4th level superpower until now, it just wasn't right. What exactly are you? Xiao Junyi demanded. Didn't you know the answer already? Ma Shu, left only with 2 teeth, sneered. Bai Hongtu kicked him angrily. Knowing is knowing, not knowing is not knowing, don't talk back to me. The great God will not forgive you. You have obstructed God's steps, you will be punished. God knows everything and can do everything. What is this, God, you're talking about? Ma Shu looked up with a worshipping gaze. God is great, light, towering, supreme, any words can't describe him. Bai Hongtu kicked at him once more. If you can't describe it, then shut up. Ma Shu was knocked unconscious by Bai Hongtu's kick. Bai Hongtu sneered, hating those who beat about the bush the most, talking for half a day with no substantial information. Today, the superpower church will take over the coastal branch. The bronzed-skinned strong man swung his butcher's knife, breaking everything in his path. His superpower was to sharpen weapons, and he himself was skilled at using blades. The combination was absolutely terrifying. The people in the coastal branch used their superpowers to attack him in multitudes. He swung his wide blade like the wind, shattering any attack. He is the knife maniac from the superpower church. Someone recognized the identity of the strong man and couldn't help but exclaim. The knife maniac was a famously listed wanted criminal, notorious in the superpower world. He was highly combative. Joining the superpower church made him even more reckless, often fighting people, almost exposing the existence of superpowers to the public. Fortunately, the Superpower User Management Bureau could always use the excuse of natural gas explosions or mass hallucinations to cover up every time. The Superpower User Management Bureau had itchy teeth against the knife maniac. They tried multiple times to send 4th and 5th level superpower users to capture him, but they always failed, and there were even cases of them being counter-killed. The strength of knife maniac was apparent. Let me give it a try. A 4th level superpower user stepped up, drawing his bow to full strength. His ability was, the longer the energy accumulates, the greater the power. The knife maniac didn't give him a chance to accumulate energy, he rushed towards him. The others could only hold him off as they evaded the knife maniac's attacks. Finally, 2 minutes passed and he finished his energy accumulation. The sharp arrow flew out. The sound of the shot followed after. This arrow had exceeded the speed of sound. The sharp arrow was like a rocket, with enormous kinetic energy and killing power, wanting to pin the knife maniac to the wall. Knife maniac stared at the tip of the arrow, swung his knife and landed a blow. It made the sound of metal collision, splitting the ultra-powerful arrow into 2 parts. I want to see who can stop me. Is that so? I'd like to try. A silhouette appeared from behind the knife maniac, pulling out a strand of his hair. The knife maniac was terrified. He abruptly drew back and swung his knife in response. Be careful, the people from the coastal branch warned the newcomer. The silhouette held a strand of hair between his fingers, blocking the knife maniac's attack. Look at you, you can't even cut your own hair, yet you dare to call yourself the knife maniac. Who are you? The knife maniac was trembling with fear, continuously retreating. This person was too strange. The silhouette casually said, my name is Zhong Li. I'm a new recruit just taken in by the coastal branch. My superpower is invincibility. Chapter 385. The Three-Eyed True God. When Dao Crazy first laid eyes on Zhong Li, he sensed danger. His battle-hardened instincts made his body react swiftly, breaking out into a cold sweat. Dao Crazy was ashamed of his reaction. He threw down his broadsword, bared fists and resonated his arms. Both hands straightened out like blades, bursting out with a sharp momentum and causing his upper body clothes to burst open. Little known to many, Dao Crazy without his sword is the most terrifying. His unique ability is to sharpen weapons and, after evolving to the 4th tier, he can even treat his own body as a weapon. In other words, his entire body could be used as a weapon, making defenses almost impossible. This ability is somewhat similar to artifact refining technique. Zhong Li murmurs softly. Dao Crazy's unique ability can booster a weapon for a short period of time, similar to a temporary artifact refining technique in cultivation. In JoJo, many masters of artifact refinement love to use their own bodies as weapons and refine them. Zhong Li had seen many masters voluntarily jumping into fire pits and letting their disciples refine their bodies, which looked utterly bizarre. However, the result was undeniable. After refinement, the body of a master of artifact refinement becomes as hard as a spiritual treasure. A perfect example would be Tang Dawei, the peak master of Dao Sect's artifact refinement peak. He consumed metal and used his body as a tool. After 1,000 refinements, his physical state was only 1 step away from a true dragon and 2 steps away from Zhong Konggu. This was already the limit of the artifact refining techniques. Instead of focusing on body refinement arts, the use of artifact refining technique supported a less effective result compared to the body refinement arts, which perfectly conformed to the creature's body. Dao Crazy's hands laid on the ground, his knees touched it, and he resembled a toad. The basic martial arts he practiced was the toad art. All his moves derived from it. When his toad technique mixes with his unique ability, he becomes an invincible war machine. The people from the Bihai branch, saved by Zhong Li, felt the eerie and spine-chilling power. Even without engaging in combat, Dao Crazy's state could easily telegraph his terrifying strength. No wonder even Tier 5 superpower users were defeated by him. Dao Crazy's fighting strength was extraordinarily high. If not for his obsession with combat, his status in the doctrine of superpowers would have definitely risen higher. Performing the technique, Dao Crazy spoke from his heart, I was wrong. Seeing Zhong Li was like a man standing in front of an unclimbable mountain range, staring at the leisurely white clouds in the blue sky, or seeing the vast, endless ocean. In front of this towering figure, Dao Crazy was nothing more than a mundane man, revealing there was no comparability between the two. As long as there is electricity, I am invincible. One of the Doctrine of Superpowers member was controlling thunder. All the electricity in the entire Bihai branch was under his control. Wherever he went, electric arcs plowed the ground and made deep trenches on the floor and ceiling. I am the god of darkness, and also the god of light. He is, lazy, a tier 5 superpower user and a lunatic in the doctrine of superpowers. People from the coastal branch exclaimed. The doctrine of superpowers has their god to believe in, and yet as one of them, he pretentiously claims to be a god himself. A manic lunatic through and through. A person standing nearby gave a glance and corrected, his name is, Son of Thunder, not Lazy. I was wondering why it felt weird to call him Lazy, as if I were calling my buddies from the countryside. The people from the coastal branch, upon knowing their mistake, corrected themselves. He is, Son of Thunder, a tier 4 superpower user and a lunatic in the doctrine of superpowers. As the Son of Thunder himself declared, as long as there's electricity, he can come and go freely, and he is invincible. In this era, few places lack electricity. Those who fought with the Son of Thunder without exceptions, they all succumbed to defeat. Their hairs were all electrocuted and burnt. I recall someone in our department has insulating superpowers, quickly get him. The one you are talking about might be me. But my power is to insulate myself from female relationships, not to insulate electricity. Oh, sorry. Son of Thunder moved freely and unhindered. The walls, iron doors, tables, chairs, benches, and even experimental apparatuses were all cut into two by his electrical arcs. You utterly suck at using the thunder arts, yet still have the audacity to call yourself the Son of Thunder. A faint voice echoed, and Zhong Li came out leisurely, treating the electric arcs as nothing. Step by step, he approached the Son of the Thunder and slapped him away. If the Son of Thunder were to live in Jojo and study in a Thunder sect, his martial arts elders would definitely hit the back of his hand with a ruler. His thunder skills were worse than a dog's. Cultivators at the nascent soul stage casting thunder arts could yield a power greater than the Son of Thunder. His method of using electricity was too rough, wasting a lot of energy. If someone could take a glance at the whole situation of the Bihai branch, they would find that Zhong Li's shadow appeared everywhere, even at multiple places at the same time. Zhong Li's body multiplied into thousands, and then he quickly defeated the members of the doctrine of superpowers. It was not just Zhong Li, many people were not saved by Zhong Li but by a sword light that appeared out of nowhere. The sword light was sharp, and though it was just one slash, it was better than thousands and millions of other methods. No superpower could resist this sword slash. Bai Hongtu stood at the center of the underground building. Using his divine sense to scan around, he swung his sword, and countless sword lights poured out like rain. It's been a long time since I've seen you use the Luo Yu sword. The original body of Zhong Li stood next to him, hands tucked in his sleeves as he laughed. The Luo Yu sword was Bai Hongtu's destined spiritual treasure which he obtained when he reached the nascent soul stage. The Luo Yu sword was a growing spiritual treasure. As Bai Hongtu's cultivation was improving, the rank of the Luo Yu sword was also increasing. When Bai Hongtu reached the Transcendence Tribulation stage, Luo Yu's sword also became a top-grade Taoist spiritual treasure, only slightly short of becoming an immortal artifact. Later, the Luo Yu sword developed its spiritual intelligence. However, it couldn't keep up with Bai Hongtu's pace in swordsmanship, so Bai Hongtu let Luo Yu's sword practice swordsmanship and await the right opportunity. After a few years now, Luo Yu's sword's swordsmanship had made significant progress and could finally accompany Bai Hongtu in battle again, although the fight in the Bihai branch couldn't be accounted as a real battle. His sword couldn't cut even a body integration realm cultivator, it was nowhere near Bai Hongtu's actual skill level. I just wanted to give it some exposure to light, Bai Hongtu laughed, swinging his sword casually before returning it to its sheath. Xiao Junyi and Peng Heliong felt as if the two were divine beings descended from the heavens, their casual conversation revealing that everything was under their control. The strength of this doctrine of superpowers is comparable to yours, Zhong Li teased Xiao Junyi. This doctrine of superpowers is a civilian organization, yet it could wrestle with the formidable government organization, the Superpower User Management Bureau. This attested to the powerful strength of the doctrine of superpowers. Zhong Li had gone through the data of the doctrine of superpowers with his divine sense. These were a group of people who worship the three-eyed true God. In their legends, the three eyes of the true God represented the past, present, and future. The three-eyed true God opened the eye representing the present, and although the other two eyes were closed, it was only because this was the view from the present. In fact, the other two eyes were looking at the past and future. People living in the present, of course, could not see when the three-eyed true God opened the other two eyes. Their sect hierarch claimed that the future eye of the three-eyed true God saw a future dominated by superpower users, who were the absolute rulers. Therefore, the doctrine of superpowers claimed to overthrow the ruling classes in the name of the supremacy of superpowers. They believed that since heaven had awakened their superpowers, it showed that they were God's chosen children, the favored ones. The future I of the three-eyed true God confirmed their beliefs. As superpower users, who didn't think they were special? Under this kind of thinking, many superpower users joined the doctrine of superpowers. Instead of saying the three-eyed true God was choosing believers, it was more accurate to say the believers were choosing their faith. They held faith in what suited their minds, and not in what didn't. Chapter 386. Thank you for your assistance. Bureau Chief Xiao solemnly thanked Zhongli and Bai Hongtu. If it weren't for these two godly beings, his Bilahai branch office would have been the disgrace of the Superpower User Management Bureau and a stepping stone for the Superpower Church. At the same time, he was secretly alarmed. The methods these two used seemed like superpowers, but they were stronger than any superpowers. They transformed themselves into millions of beings, each one incredibly powerful, their swords transforming into energy, splitting into thousands of threads, capable of cutting through any superpower. Intuition told Bureau Chief Xiao that these were nothing more than a fraction of their capabilities, the tip of the iceberg. The Bilahai branch has nothing to repay you with, please accept these few tons of gold. Behind Bureau Chief Xiao stood a mountain of gold. He used his superpower of turning stone to gold to create gold and wanted to gift it to the two of them. If we can't repay, we won't repay. We didn't act for the sake of some metals. Bai Hongtu seemed casual, not to mention gold or silver, even all kinds of spirit stones did not pique their interest. In their eyes, gold and silver were merely common metals. The hard currency of the Zhou Empire was the spirit stone. Moreover, turning stone to gold was merely changing the properties of matter, who wouldn't know how to do that? Bai Hongtu could also turn gold into silver, mud into clean water, cloth into metal. Would you please come to the office for a chat? Sure, you two should step aside for a bit. Bureau Chief Xiao asked his daughter and Peng Lionghai to leave. There's no need, we're not trying to hide anything. We've always been honest and never lied. Zhang Li smiled, he acted openly and honestly, had a clear conscience, and was never afraid of others knowing his actions. Bai Hongtu nodded, he was that kind of person too. Peng Lionghai was astonished, are you really only 18 years old? Zhang Li, Bai Hongtu, you must be talking about your mental age. Seeing the two men's expressions, Bureau Chief Xiao understood that their actual ages were far beyond this. He quickly smoothed things over. Zhang Li glared at Bai Hongtu, blaming him for fooling around and making up their ages before. Bai Hongtu turned his head away and avoided looking at Zhang Li. Zhang Li cleared his throat. Although there were some jokes involved in what we said before, the essence was not different. When I introduced myself before, I said that my power was unbeatable, which is not quite accurate. To be precise, I have not yet met anyone who can beat me. Isn't that unbeatable? Xiao Junyi commented. When old Bai introduced himself, he said his power was cultivation. That's not wrong either. Both of us are cultivators. You are really cultivators. Despite having mentally prepared themselves, the confirmation from him personally was different. Let me formally introduce myself. I come from the world of Zhou. I am the human emperor of the 9 prefectures and a cultivator at the Mahayana realm, Zhang Li. He also comes from the world of Zhou. He is the sect master of the Dao sect, a cultivator at the Transcendence Tribulation stage, Bai Hongtu. As I mentioned before, the path of cultivation is divided into several levels. From low to high, they are Qi cultivation, foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, divinity transformation, fusion, crossing tribulation, ascension or Mahayana. I was strolling the void and accidentally discovered your world. I apologize for not announcing my arrival. Not at all. Bureau Chief Xiao got up, unwilling to accept Zhang Li's apology. The ancient books record that those with the superpower of the 1,000-mile eye can see other worlds beyond this one. That ancient superpower user said there was not just one world, and between worlds, there was a void. The storm of the void is violent and fierce, and even a little bit leaking into the Wei Jiu world, even the legendary 6th or 7th level superpower users would not be able to withstand. That would be a disaster. This man named Zhang Li can travel the void. His power has surpassed Bureau Chief Xiao's imagination. For someone like him to enter without announcement, it's just him being polite to the Bureau Chief. Does he assume the Bureau Chief would even be able to hear him? Bureau Chief Xiao was dumbfounded and didn't know what to say for a moment. He tried his best to imagine the strength of the two men, but in the end, he found his imagination to be limited and not keeping up with reality. Bureau Chief Xiao saw his daughter and Peng Lionhai in a daze, unaware of the meaning in Zhang Li's words, and so he explained to them what are other worlds, and what is the void. As soon as Xiao Junyi and Peng Lionhai understood, they too were left dumbfounded, and Bureau Chief Xiao finally felt balanced. Actually, Bureau Chief Xiao's understanding was very superficial, and what he said was full of loopholes. There were so many that Zhang Li did not want to correct one by one, and simply told them from the beginning about the concepts of cultivation, Zhou, the immortal realm, Ascension, and other concepts that everyone in the world of Zhou knows. After all, hearing this, Bai Hongtu couldn't help but yawn. These are all concepts he learned in his enlightenment period. The bureau chief and the other two were very interested in listening. The content of Zhang Li's narration was like a myth and legend, but now, someone was saying that myths and legends were all real. The man who was speaking was the biggest mythical legend himself. Compared with the cultivators of the Zhou world, their superpower users seemed too peculiar. Bureau Chief Xiao didn't know how to describe it. It could be seen from the battle between the Superpower Church and Bilahai Division this time. Their flashy superpowers clashed a lot, but what they produced wasn't power, but rather things that made people both laugh and cry. Zhang Li and Bai Hongtu had different thoughts from Bureau Chief Xiao. While superpowers may not be very powerful, the principles behind them are not to be overlooked. For example, the superpower that ruined the relationship with women involves the power of causality. It's extremely high-end, and not many people in Zhou have it. By the way, I have something to ask Bureau Chief Xiao for. Mr. Zhang, please feel free to ask. If it's within my power, I'll certainly help. No, even if it's beyond my power, I'll use my connections to help. It's not something that's serious. I just heard that there is a small statue of the three-eyed true god in the storage room of Bilahai Division. Can it be given to me? What is stored in Bilahai Division's storage room are all secret files, mysterious items, things affected by superpowers, etc. The level of secrecy is very high. It requires the permission of at least 3 high-level officials to enter. Zhang Li saw it with his divine sense. Seeing Bureau Chief Xiao start to look nervous, Zhang Li reassured him. Don't worry, Bureau Chief Xiao, I am not a member of the Superpower Church, nor will I join the Superpower Church. I am just interested in the statue of the three-eyed true god. With that being said, Bureau Chief Xiao could only take out the statue of the three-eyed true god. This item is given to Mr. Zhang. Thank you. Bai Hongtu didn't understand why Zhang Li wanted this thing. It was not attractive at all. To be a symbol of faith, the statue certainly didn't look bad. Bai Hongtu was just prejudiced against the three-eyed true god. He did not think it looked like a god and believed it was merely a fabrication by the people. What's this about 3 eyes looking into the past, present, and future? The ancestor Emperor Shun of Dazhou could see that with just 2 eyes, why need a third one? Zhang Li and Bai Hongtu thought the same, but they had the respected god hidden as a reference, so he had to try for himself. Zhang Li tapped the statue lightly with the force used to tap an egg. A piece of the statue's paint fell off instantly. Zhang Li added a bit more force and the statue crumbled into dust. Okay, Zhang Li could confirm this three-eyed true god did not exist, and even if it did, it was not anything significant. Chapter 387, a situation that the extraterrestrial heavenly demon didn't expect. Everyone present did not understand what Zhang Li was trying to do, took a statue, and knocked it down. This is surely an idle act. The material of the statue is not metal, it can naturally be broken. Zhang Li did not explain too much to them. With that, the threat from the superpower sect in Zhang Li's eyes dropped several notches. Your world seems very peaceful. Zhang Li, accepting the tea made by Xiao Junyi, took a light sip. It's fine. Originally our world was also chaotic, with several countries in constant war. At that time, superpower users united and operated in the shadows, using all means to finally merge several countries into one. Can you tell us about the history of your world? Director Xiao nodded, asking, where should I start? From the place where historical records exist, or from seemingly absurd legends? I still have some interest in legends. There are many versions of the legends. Director Xiao chose to tell the ones that seemed plausible based on personal experience. These legends are only known to superpower users. The history books of ordinary people have another version. Legend has it that 6,000 years ago, the human tribe was weak, struggling for survival in nature. Then the heavenly messengers descended and performed miracles, gifting us the ability known as superpowers. I used to think that the heavenly realm was just a conceptual term. Now it appears it might be the immortal realm you mention. Armed with superpowers, we were finally able to stand our ground in nature, able to withstand attacks from powerful beasts. Superpower historians believe that after all, only a very small part of the population acquired superpowers. These superpowers were not universal. Over-reliance on superpower users could not bring about social progress. Under the protection of the superpower users, people without superpowers used their hands and brains to start exploring natural laws. Bronze, iron tools. The tools used by common people kept changing, becoming stronger and stronger. We evolved from a primitive society, tribal society, to the emergence of a slave state. In the history textbooks of ordinary people, the earliest slave country monarchs all had some extraordinary aspects, such as subduing mountains and rivers with a fist, causing suffocation with a tiger-like stare, and making laws with every word. Ordinary people believe that these are exaggerations made by historical records to elevate the status of the monarch. But superpower users know that these monarchs were superpower users. After all, at that time human civilization was not perfect. Whoever was strong was the ruler, without considering if those rulers had the ability to govern. Their impulsive decisions were often unreasonable. History proves this point too. All kinds of unreasonable commands from those monarchs led to the rapid extinction of their countries, disappearing like a mirage in history. Besides, the descendants of superpower users may not necessarily be superpower users. If a superpower user becomes the ruler, who should be the ruler after the death of this superpower user? His useless son. Since the ruler of the country is decided by whose power is strong, naturally stronger superpower users will emerge. For all these reasons, the turnover rate of slave states was too fast. Few countries could last for 3 generations. Superpower users later realized this was wrong and chose to retreat behind the scenes, letting ordinary people be the rulers. This was the era of feudal society. Feudal states endured much longer than slave states. Generally, monarchs could make correct decisions, but there were always superpower users who thought they were unique, threatening the monarch with death. The monarch, fearing death, could only make wrong decisions. Too many wrong decisions accumulated over time and eventually became the root cause of the country's collapse. Later on, an agreement was reached among the superpower users to truly hide and no longer meddle in the affairs of state governance. This is the modern society. The superpower sect, however, wants to violate this agreement, advocates for superpower users ruling the nation, and makes the history go backward, which the Superpower User Management Bureau will never allow. 6,000 years ago, the heavenly realm. Zhongli remembered that he was squabbling with Bai Hongtu and hadn't tested the speed of time flow in Wei Gu's world. Bai Hongtu firmly stated that he would not go to Zhouzhou to help Zhongli measure the rate of time flow and then be summoned again. Zhongli had no choice but to contact Yu Yin via the remote communication talisman. Yu Yin, are you busy? Yu Yin was relaxing, reading a novel with Zhongli as the protagonist. Not particularly busy, what's up? Just to chat with you casually and test the speed of time. Seeing the background at Zhongli and Bai Hongtu's end, Yu Yin knew the two have found a new world. Not even inviting me over when you find a new world. Bai Hongtu rubbed his hands excitedly, wishing to come is not difficult, I'll set up a summoning formation and summon you over. Seeing Bai Hongtu's smile, Yu Yin knew this might not be a good thing and decisively declined. Just tell me about the new world when you guys come back. The call ended. 9,000 years have passed in Zhouzhou, 6,000 years have passed in this world. The time corresponds. Heavenly realm is not the immortal realm, but the world of the heavenly demons. Your superpowers are created by the heavenly demons. Bai Hongtu was puzzled and did not understand what the heavenly demons wanted to do. Zhongli understood. Do you think superpowers are powerful? Powerful, but not absolutely powerful. A large number of ordinary people can defeat a superpower user. Exactly, not particularly powerful, but the superpower users who consider themselves superior living in the same world with a vast number of ordinary people, these two entities are bound to conflict. The constant change of dynasties is an example. Superpower users voluntarily step down, willing to let ordinary people rule, alleviating the conflict. This may have been unexpected to the heavenly demons. Zhongli believes heavenly immortal level demons are rare, and the number of worlds needing to be destroyed are many. Heavenly immortal level demons are busy and it takes a long time before they come back to check and make adjustments after setting things in motion. Perhaps the heavenly immortal level demon has not descended into this world for the second time yet. Within the magnificent structure, a huge statue of the three-eyed true God stood tall. The man in the golden robe silently looked up at the statue with his hands behind his back. Compared to the statue, the figure of the man in the golden robe seemed too small. Hierarch, it's bad, a high-ranking official of the superpower sect stumbled over, reporting the situation with a panicked expression on his face. The golden-robed man frowned, considering his lower-ranking members lacking in foresight and not being useful. Seeing the hierarch's displeasure, the high-ranking official of the sect suddenly realized that this was a place of worship, with the hierarch in the process of worshipping the true god hurriedly slowed down his pace, carefully walking over. Filled with fear, although in the outside world, he can command the wind and the clouds as a 5th-level superpower user, but in front of the unfathomable hierarch, he can only swallow his pride. He had seen the hierarch in action, a superpower user of equal standing to him reverted to a child as if time was flowing backward. Energy is conserved, and when one regresses from an adult to a child, the excess energy is absorbed by the hierarch. The hierarch also gained that person's superpowers. The hierarch possessed an extremely rare power of absorption ability. Chapter 388. The Sect Hierarch's Worries. What's the matter? Did something unexpected occur with the Sea City plan? The sect hierarch calmly asked, seeming indifferent to the plan for Sea City. Indeed, he didn't care. Sea City was just a risky game for him. If successful, they would take over the Sea City branch. If not, a hefty, death indemnity, would be obtained. The deal was a sure win and carried no risk. The sect members fought and died for the divinity, enough to show their devout hearts. Given this, they would surely prefer that the death indemnity be contributed to the sect and the divinity. We've swayed some people, mixed in some spies, and even dropped in reinforcements. Everything has gone as planned. In theory, we can take over the Sea City branch. The sect hierarch chuckled lightly, his words tinged with coldness. Theory. In theory, an ice-related ability can freeze time, an ability that grows stronger when being hit can infinitely strengthen, and an illusory ability can place all humans into an illusion. If theories were all reliable, what is the need for practice? If you enjoy discussing theories, I can arrange for you to teach at a university. No, I did not mean it that way. The mutant senior quickly claimed that he had misspoke earlier. Say what you have to say. I don't like hearing explanations, and I don't want to hear frivolities either. Our sect needs actual effort to succeed, not language skills. Reflect upon mistakes and correct them when found. Do you understand? The mutant senior certainly understood this rationale. However, with the leader spoke these words, he could only obediently say, I understand. So, what happened within the Sea City branch? 2 or maybe 3 newcomers acted, taking care of everyone. The sect hierarch turned around, his eyes bright, rubbing his ring. Tell me about it. All who infiltrated the Sea City branch have been captured, and we couldn't get anything directly from them. Thankfully, we have previously invaded the CCTV of the Sea City branch and were able to perceive this scene. The mutant senior invited the sect hierarch to the projection room. In the projection room, the sect hierarch saw Zhongli and Bai Hongtu display their power, transform into thousands, rain down sword chi, and solve the problem with ease. Moreover, not a single person was killed. Everyone had been captured alive by the Sea City branch. Interesting. I believe these two might possess some unknown abilities. As long as we figure out their abilities, they will pose no threat. And the third person, Peng Lionhai, as one of the 3 newbies. The other 2 are so strong, there's no reason he's just an average enhancer. I suspect that despite not acting, Peng Lionhai could be the strongest among the 3. The sect hierarch glanced at the senior of the sect and sighed out 2 words. Foolish. Please enlighten me, sect hierarch. These 2 are indeed very strong, but not in the way you understand. They might originate from a different world. The mix of senior mutants was taken aback. With your intellect, naturally you can't understand. Don't force yourself to understand what you can't understand. But the cleverness in you is your speculation about Peng Lionhai. The senior of the mutant sect stared blankly at the sect hierarch, noticing an unfamiliar expression of excitement on his face. Having been in the sect for 40 years, he had never seen the sect hierarch expressing such a countenance. No, I don't have enough intelligence on the 3 of them. I'm not sure I'll win. I need more preparation. The sect hierarch always trusted his intuition. His intuition told him that if he could obtain the power of these 3, he would become unprecedentedly strong, possibly even dispensing the need for the total mutant proliferation plan. He believed that each mutant ability represented the origin of the world. If he could combine all mutant abilities, he might be able to achieve the effect of creating worlds. By then, he would become the singular and supreme king of this world, with no one daring to oppose him. And this was not an unsubstantiated belief. Currently, He possessed tens of thousands of mutant abilities and had vaguely touched upon the threshold of creating worlds. It's already quite close, just lacking several rare mutant abilities. The sect hierarch had been waiting for mutant abilities that had appeared in history but were yet to emerge. As a possessor of all attributes, he also had miseries he couldn't share with others. What the hell are these, repel a girl, and, repel a boy, abilities? Why did I absorb these two mutant abilities in the past? The sect hierarch reluctantly thought of the greater plan of creating worlds, for which he had endured humiliation and absorbed these two abilities, resulting in constant solitude. He came close to autism. He fell in love with a female believer and was dumped by her as soon as the repel a girl ability exerted its influence. Furthermore, she wanted to quit the sect. Then there's this damned, as you say, ability. When, as you say, is activated, the shut up ability is always triggered. Due to this reason, the sect hierarch had not been able to use the, as you say, ability. After days of earnest practicing of ventriloquism to bypass the shut up ability, the sect hierarch never expected the shut up ability to be able to shut off ventriloquism too. It was then that the sect hierarch truly gave up on using, as you say. And then there's the healing ability, coupled with the balding equals strengthening trait. A person generally goes bald directly after awakening the balding equals strengthening ability, and the hair never grows back. However, the sect hierarch was different as he also had the healing ability. His healing ability was so formidable that it could cure wounds automatically. The healing ability insisted that balding was also an injury. This led to the sect hierarch's hair suddenly sprouting out and then disappearing, sprouting out again and then vanishing. His hair grew faster than leaks. So the sect hierarch had to cover his head with a hood. But this had its advantages too. He had a strengthening upon injury ability, and constant hair loss was deemed an injury, thus lightening him continuously. Although the increase in strength was negligible, the effect was present, which was encouraging to him. Driven by curiosity, the sect hierarch once watched the horror film, Ghostly Fright Night, and failed to sleep, due to the photographic memory ability. Luckily, he also possessed the memory erase ability. The sect hierarch erased his memory of watching the horror film. His memory was erased so thoroughly that he forgot about watching Ghostly Fright Night. Yielding to curiosity, he ended up watching it again. He erased his memory once again. After repeating this cycle for several days, the sect hierarch finally realized something was wrong. He used a recording to document his behavior, eventually uncovering the truth. I've sacrificed so much for the birth of the world, said the sect hierarch to himself, marveling at his own dedication. He stood before the statue of the three-eyed god without any reverence. You'd better bless me with success. If I succeed, I will promote you worldwide when I become the ruler. If I fail, I'll smash you into oblivion. When the members of the mutant sect learned about the existence of a statue of the three-eyed god, they were thrilled thinking there was indeed such a god that closely matched their wishes. In reality, the sect hierarch made up the three-eyed god according to the psychology of the mutants. His purpose in organizing the mutant sect was not to grow strength, but to gather various mutants together. Chapter 389, 2 Essays. In the classroom, countless teachers were scoring high school exam papers on computer screens. While the grading criteria for other papers were clear, making scoring easier and less subjective, the Chinese language paper proved difficult with significant fluctuations in scores. The scoring of the high school exam papers used a double-blind grading method, meaning two teachers scored each paper. If their given scores did not differ significantly, they averaged the scores. But if the scores differed greatly, they referred the paper to the head of the marking team for a final decision. Two teachers had run into such a situation. On How the Transcendence Tribulation Stage Can Defeat the Mahayana Realm. What a strange title, a teacher muttered to himself. Having marked papers for so many years, he had never come across such a peculiar title. Who knows what these kids are thinking these days? After a moment's hesitation, this teacher gave the essay a score of 25. On How the Transcendence Tribulation Stage Can Defeat the Mahayana Realm. Now that's an interesting title, another teacher said, instantly alert after being in a drowsy state. Exactly, writing is about being innovative. What's the point of churning out the same style using templates and clichés? The more this teacher read, the more he liked it. Without a second thought, he gave it a score of 60. This was a full score for the essay. 2 essays got auto-submitted to me. It seems like the differences in the assessment scores of these 2 essays are significant. The marking team leader chuckled as he opened these 2 papers. On How the Transcendence Tribulation Stage Can Defeat the Mahayana Realm, and How to Become an Immortal. Interesting. I just don't know what those phases mean. Ah, I see, assuming there are people in the world who can become immortals through hard work, then the closest level to becoming an immortal would be the Transcendence Tribulation stage. That's very well detailed. The first essay has an excellent writing style and imagination, as if it seriously contemplates how the Transcendence Tribulation stage could defeat the Mahayana realm. But the later part seems to be teaching people how to cultivate from scratch. So this is it. Doing this can draw energy into the body. I really want to give it a try. Let me test whether it's good or bad luck. It's good luck. Little did people know, the marking team leader had a special ability to predict luck. Not all superpower users join the Superpower User Management Bureau or the Superpower Church. Some, like the marking team leader, registered with the bureau but lived ordinary lives. Let's give it a try. What's this thing that's trying to drill its way into my body? The marking team leader stood up abruptly, his face filled with horror. The other teachers looked at him, confused. The marking team leader, realizing he was making a scene, coughed awkwardly and quickly waved off any concerns, trying to control his excitement. According to How to Become an Immortal, I am drawing energy into the body and have entered the chi cultivation stage. The marking team leader felt a continual surge of energy in his body. His entire physique seemed years younger, and his various old age symptoms were also improving or healing. And this was just the most basic stage of cultivation. What happened? Why is there nothing else? The marking team leader desperately wanted the subsequent instructions and kept scrolling down, but the text ended abruptly there, seemingly disconnected. Who on earth limited the essay length to 800 words? The marking team leader roared internally, his eyes reddening. He had never felt such hatred for an essay's word limit before. If the author were allowed to finish the piece, it would benefit the whole world in a way beyond measure. The marking team leader coughed up blood in frustration. He wanted to check the author's information, but he did not have the authority to access it. To check the author's information, he had to report it to the higher-ups. Using his ability, he discovered that reporting this matter to the education department would result in neither good nor bad luck. This meant he would return without accomplishing anything. Surely those fools won't believe me. The marking team leader knew the modus operandi of these government officials all too well. They would always do their best to avoid extra work. He used his ability again, imagining himself reporting this matter to the Superpower User Management Bureau. Good luck. The marking team leader perked up. The Superpower User Management Bureau was reliable indeed. Unlike government officials, the staff at the Superpower User Management Bureau love to stir things up. They don't shy away from trouble, on the contrary, the more interesting the matter, the better. This matter would certainly pique their interest. To prevent assessment bias, high school exam papers are scanned and sent to another city where teachers there would review them. The marking team leader wasn't in C City but in a major city several thousand kilometers away from C City. As expected, the Superpower User Management Bureau found the information reported by the marking team leader interesting, especially since he managed to show the results of drawing energy into the body successfully breaking a massive stone with his bare chest. The marking team leader was in his 50s, with a beer belly, balding and showing all signs of age. When someone like him said he was okay and placed a large stone on his bare chest, it felt bizarre to the other superpower users watching. People were both anxious and frightened. Would it be the chest breaking the stone, or the stone breaking his chest? You come, you look the strongest. The marking team leader called out to a muscular superpower user, who looked like he could swing a large hammer. All right, the muscular man responded gruffly. Just as the muscular man was about to lift the giant hammer, the marking team leader suddenly asked, "What's your ability?" "Hitting a cow across a mountain." "Quick, find someone else." Eventually, another superpower user who could swing a large hammer was found. The marking team leader truly reached the chi cultivation stage and lived up to everyone's expectations, reducing the stone to rubble. The stone shattered, but it also left him spitting up blood. He was after all only at the initial stage of chi cultivation with a body that was not made of steel. A healing superpower user who was waiting on the sidelines hurried over and managed to save him. But this incident convinced everyone that the marking team leader was speaking the truth. The marking team leader's ability was at first level, with a physique similar to an ordinary person, who after being treated thus and not dying, proved that there had been profound changes in his body. The Superpower User Management Bureau recognized the value of the article, How to Become an Immortal, and decided to report it as well. Let's also report on how the Transcendence Tribulation stage can defeat the Mahayana realm, added in. The Superpower User Management Bureau was highly efficient, and a person at the deputy director's level took over the matter within half a day. Director, there's an important development. The deputy director brought the marking team leader to the director's office. At that time, the director was entertaining 2 guests in his office. The deputy director felt this matter was of great importance and decided to inform the director, even though he was meeting guests. Please take a look at these 2 essays. They were written by 2 high school exam takers. Their names have been hidden by the education department. Do you think we should use our jurisdiction to uncover their identities, or wait until the exam results are released to find them? The director glanced at the 2 essays, then at the 2 guests, an indescribable look on his face. Zhang Li and Bai Hong were deeply interested in what was happening and called the marking team leader over. Are you in charge of marking? Yes. The marking team leader did not dare to slack off. Any guest invited into the director's office would definitely hold significant status. Tell us, who do you think wrote the better essay? Chapter 390, Humming Back and Forth. The exam review group leader unconsciously used his mystic ability. He said, regarding the scripture on how to defeat the Mahayana through the transcendent tribulation, was well written, it was difficult to judge as good or bad. He said the document how to become immortal, was well crafted as well, it was challenging to make a fair determination. Weird. The group leader of the exam reviewers muttered. He had been using his abilities for a lifetime, and he had never seen such a situation before. It was as if he couldn't estimate anything involving these 2. What he didn't know was that judging good or bad fate fell within the scope of the way of cause and effect. Even the yin-yang heaven seal, which was most proficient in the way of cause and effect, couldn't find Zhang Li's cause and effect, let alone his inferior mystic abilities. Zhang Li's cause and effect were undetectable, invisible, inaudible, embodying emptiness. He mused for a moment, then said, the writing styles of these 2 papers are not much different, we need to consider other aspects. The first sentence from the group leader doubtingly raised the eyebrows of both Bai Hongtu and Zhang Li. What did he mean by not much difference in writing style? How could his writing be compared to the esteemed human emperor, sect master of Tao sect? Clearly, his writing was superior. In terms of imagination, on how to defeat the Mahayana through the transcendent tribulation, is somewhat better. It's evident that the author is a freethinker who enjoys fantasy. What? Bai Hongtu interjected, raising his voice. What did he mean by prating about? Although he did not use his mystic abilities, the group leader had a hunch that something bad was going to happen. His professionalism made him continue his analysis. How to become immortal, however, evokes imagination on first reading as well. But with the instructions given, I could practice and make something out of it. This demonstrates that this scripture is not entirely fictitious, hence it's slightly inferior in terms of imagination. Bai Hongtu mumbled again, his voice descending from high to low. On how to defeat the Mahayana through the transcendent tribulation, quote some made-up famous people, like something said by the immortal elder and the sect master of Tao sect, which I haven't heard of, this is a drawback. What? Bai Hongtu parred out again, punctuation marked by raising his voice. Although I haven't heard of these famous people, after pondering over their quotes, it seems to make sense. This must be the author's personal wisdom, which is quite thought-provoking. Bai Hongtu mumbled again, his voice descending from high to low. However, the calligraphy in on how to defeat the Mahayana through the transcendent tribulation, kind of flies off the handle, doesn't look great. What? Bai Hongtu parred out again, punctuation marked by raising his voice. Slap. Zhang Li couldn't hold back anymore and slapped Bai Hongtu on the back of his head. Bai Hong's humming was like an annoying mosquito, making one furious upon hearing it. All in all, I consider on how to defeat the Mahayana through the transcendent tribulation, a notch better. I knew at first glance that you were an unbiased judge with good eye. Good. Bai Hongtu was smugly satisfied, the more he saw the group leader's beer belly, the more he liked it. Bai Hongtu pointed at the group leader's beer belly, and it slowly disappeared, and thick black hair appeared on his head. What is this? The group leader was thrilled, he didn't expect such a magical ability. Did I become handsome and slim? Right. Bai Hongtu nodded, this is the illusion I cast on you. From now on, you will look like this to yourself. What about others? How will they see me? Of course, it's still a beer belly and balding. Zhang Li wanted to slap Bai Hongtu again at the back of his head. This time, Bai Hongtu was prepared and ducked his head. Seeing the disappointed expression of the group leader, Zhang Li explained, he was lying to you. What he just performed was not an illusion, but reshaping magic. What you look like now is real. In order not to let Bai Hongtu to be too proud, Zhang Li felt defeated inside, although his face remained expressionless, as if he didn't care about this matter. The winner often loves to watch the expression on the loser's face. Zhang Li understood this well. Shape-shifting magic is quite a simple Dao method, allegedly originated from a beautiful female cultivator who loved to eat. Delicious food often contained a great deal of energy. The female cultivator ate too much and couldn't digest it properly. She put on weight. In order to maintain her good figure, she dedicated herself to practice, and eventually developed the art of shape-shifting. When this ability came about, it caused a huge wave among female cultivators. On the other hand, the deputy director was still talking to the director about the importance of the two scriptures, showering them with great compliments. The deputy director thought he was boasting, but in fact he was not. The director understood better than the deputy director how terrifying it was to cultivate immortality. Alright, old Zhang, I got it. Let the group leader stay, you can go back first. When the director had said this much, the deputy director could only leave. You two gentlemen are enjoying your human experience. How comfortable. The director grinned, having learned about the two men from Bureau Chief Xiao, and just by chance, they were also visiting the capital city, so he politely invited them over. But before he could say two sentences, he was interrupted by the deputy director. Aren't you looking for the owners of the two scriptures? Here they are. The director saw the group leader's enthusiastic eyes. This was the first cultivator in Weigu's world, which was of utmost importance. The group leader was stunned, he didn't expect such a coincidence. You two have given me teaching and guidance, please accept my bow. Neither of them would allow him to bow down. Bai Hongtu had only one disciple, Yu Yushan, an emissary of the Dao sect, who was acting as a host in the Mingzhong world. Zhang Li didn't even have a disciple. Both of them couldn't possibly accept a disciple absent-mindedly. To impart the knowledge about cultivation, yes. To accept him as a disciple, no. The group leader knew the personality of distinguished persons, so he reluctantly gave up. So you want the cultivation method? Zhang Li chuckled. He was asking not only the group leader but also the director. The director was ecstatic, he could obtain the cultivation method. He thought that cultivation required inheritance, which couldn't be passed on, and the two wouldn't tell him the cultivation method. Who would have thought that he could easily get the cultivation method? Then who are you planning to teach the cultivation method to? Zhang Li's question left the director speechless. Yes, who should cultivate after all? Should it be those with supernatural powers, or should a group of people with good talents be selected, or should it be promoted to all? No matter which choice you make, there are both advantages and disadvantages, and the director can't judge the size of the advantages and disadvantages for a while. Seeing the director's hesitation, Zhang Li couldn't help but understand the director's dilemma. Does the gentleman have any suggestions? The director asked humbly for advice. This is a matter of your world, and I won't interfere. But now that you're aware of this, do you still want the cultivation method? The director chuckled bitterly. Asked by Zhang Li, he felt a heavy burden on his shoulders. After getting the cultivation method, he would have sleepless nights and might make wrong decisions in a rush. Now that the delicate balance has finally been achieved between the superpower individuals and ordinary people, it symbolizes the end of 6,000 years of conflict. If the cultivation method cannot be controlled properly, it could potentially end up in a 6,000 years of strife again. Gentlemen, I apologize for the trouble. I would like to reconsider this matter before asking for the cultivation method. That's fine too. Chapter 391. The ability that the sect hierarch lacks. After asking the leader of the review committee to leave, the director general stood up to pay his respects to Zhang Li and Bai Hongtu. The leader of the special ability sect is highly ambitious. He not only wants to become a ruler, but he also wants to create a world. The Superpower User Management Bureau has multiple times mobilized several fifth-order superpower users to assassinate him, but he is extremely powerful, possessing several different abilities, each of a fifth order. Not only did we fail to assassinate him, he even turned the tables on us. We sent spies to join the special ability sect and, after several years undercover, we finally learned about his general plan. He believes that by melding all superpowers together, he can obtain a Genesis-like strength, and his personal superpower is the ability to absorb others' superpowers. For this reason, he is terrifyingly powerful, and we are no match for him. As we know, he lacks only a few rare superpowers and then he will have amassed all superpowers, allowing him to carry out his plan of Genesis. Bai Hongtu curiously asked, which superpowers does he still lack? Immunity to heat and cold, restored light, invisibility, and banishment to another space. These 4 superpowers seldom appear. A single occurrence may not even happen in centuries. While this is due to incomplete historical records, it still shows their rarity. During the 180 years since the establishment of the Superpower User Management Bureau, we have never heard of anyone awakening these 4 kinds of superpowers. Although I really want to question the restored light superpower, what I'm more curious about is what banishment to another space is, and how is it different from the general space superpower. Zhongli knew that many people in this world have space superpowers, and can manipulate space on a small scale, which is a superficial grasp of the Tao of space. A 5th-order space superpower is considered of average or slightly below average level in the Buddhist circles well versed with the Tao of space. Considered an average level in the Buddhist circles is the creation of a storage ring. Yet in the Wei-Jiu world, superpower users are not able to create storage rings. Of this, we don't know much either. We only know that 1,700 years ago, someone had awakened the banishment to another space superpower, and could make people and objects disappear out of thin air. Even after 10 or 20 years, when the people and objects reappear, they are just as they were originally. A 70-year-old man who was banished to another space returned 10 years later by that superpower user, only to find he was still 70, exactly the same as he was before he disappeared. It was as if time had stopped for him. When those who had been banished were asked what they saw after they disappeared, those people seemed to have lost all memory and had no knowledge of what had happened after they disappeared. Even the superpower users themselves didn't know where the people they banished went. Logically, time should flow in any space. For example, within a storage ring, time does not stand still. The purpose of the storage ring is to place objects, not to preserve them for a long time. In the 9 provinces world, when cultivators study spells, they first learn from textbooks such as Complete Guide to Spells, Spell Analysis, and Understanding the Tao of Magic, and have old cultivators explain over and over until they understand the principle of spells and can cast spells. Knowing the what is precondition upon understanding the why. But in the Wei-Jiu world, superpower users often don't even know when they awakened their superpower or what the awakened power is. They only realize one day that they seem to have a special ability and understand that they have become superpower users. As for how to use the superpower, it requires slow exploration. They only know how to use the superpower, but not the principle of the superpower. Zhongli said, "Before you've learned to walk, you've learned to run. This is currently a defect of your world." The Director General, helpless, said, "We also know that this is not conducive to discovering superpowers, but we really don't know the principles of superpowers. This is not hard. The essence of superpower lies in the application of the 5 elements spiritual root. As for what the 5 elements spiritual root is, you'll figure it out when you want me to teach you the way of cultivation." The Director General was overjoyed. As expected, these 2 were top figures from another world. The problem that had plagued the Wei-Jiu world for 6,000 years was so simple in their eyes. He decided that when he sent off these 2 gentlemen, he must stay up all night, researching while requesting multi-party advice, so as to determine who should be taught the way of cultivation. Xiao Junyi and Peng Lionhai followed Director Xiao to the headquarters to report. After the report, Director Xiao lingered at headquarters to strengthen relations with the high-level officials there. Xiao Junyi and Peng Lionhai temporarily had nothing to do. "I remember you said that you wanted to go to Capital University. Since we're here in the capital city, why not go and have a look at Capital University?" Xiao Junyi suggested. "Coincidentally, I graduated from Capital University, so I'm quite familiar with it. I can be your tour guide." "But didn't you say your academic performances were mediocre?" Peng Lionhai was puzzled. Capital University was one of the top 5 universities, and although Peng Lionhai was confident in his academic abilities, he wasn't confident about getting in. On the way to the capital city, the 2 chatted about their academic performances in passing, with Xiao Junyi commenting that she was always in the middle of her class, far inferior to Peng Lionhai's academic performance. "My father donated a teaching building to Capital University." "I see." Mid-June, the weather was scorching hot. The 2, wearing short sleeves and eating popsicles, were touring Capital University. Xiao Junyi was serving her duty as a university student and a tour guide, explaining the charm of Capital University to Peng Lionhai with enthusiasm. "This is the library of Capital University, which holds the 3rd highest number of books in the country." "Which 2 are ranked higher?" "The second is the National Library, and the first is the internal library of the Superpower User Management Bureau. The headquarters has more books than the National Library." Peng Lionhai was surprised. "The National Library is open to the public, anyone can read there, but there are some books naturally wouldn't be convenient to be placed there, such as works studying superpowers and real historical records involving superpower users, and so on. Speaking of which, do you have a major you are interested in?" Peng Lionghai was troubled. I haven't thought about it. Are you interested in arts or sciences? Sciences. Xiao Junyi was browsing the university forum and cheerfully said, it is just in time that Professor Luo is lecturing on basic physics today. Should we go to listen? Does Professor Luo lecture well? He lectures really well. Whenever I had insomnia, I would fall asleep as soon as I listened to his class. Is basic physics hard to learn? It's really easy to learn. You understand it as soon as you listen. Xiao Junyi dragged Peng Lionghai to Professor Luo's lecture, not because she liked listening to Professor Luo's lectures but because she missed her school days. Before they stepped into the classroom, they could hear the resounding voice of Professor Luo. They walked into the classroom tippy-toed and discreetly sat down in the last row. A system of identically constituted particles, when particles 1 and 2 are swapped, we can prove, are either symmetric or antisymmetric. Particles in symmetric states are known as bosons, those in antisymmetric states are known as fermions. One of the consequences of the antisymmetry of fermions is the Pauli exclusion principle, that is, two fermions cannot occupy the same state. Chapter 392, Banished to Another Dimension. Are you sure this is an introduction course to physics? Even without studying, Peng Lionghai could tell it was quantum mechanics. Blushing, Xiao Junyi acknowledged that she should not believe everything she heard in the university forum. She guiltily explained, in Capital City University, quantum mechanics is the most basic physics. Peng Lionghai rolled his eyes. The content above is not difficult, everyone can learn it with a little effort. Professor Luo spoke passionately from the stage to a group of half-understanding students. Professor Luo found this year's students to be very hard to teach, they didn't even understand such simple things. Were these really the top students selected from across the country through the national exam, the local exam top scorers? Quite average. Since everyone has learned it, we will begin with a roll call quiz. If the student called can't answer, you will fail this course. At these words, the students immediately became nervous. If they couldn't answer, they failed, this was too great a price. Professor Luo hadn't made such strict requirements before. Xiao Junyi was puzzled. I remember Professor Luo being a kind man when I studied, he was a bit loud, but he never failed anyone. Whatever knowledge he outlined before the exams was always useful. Having a bad day, Peng Lionghai didn't know how to respond. But Professor Luo seemed pretty happy. To Xiao Junyi, Professor Luo seemed odd. Jiangsu, answer this question, why do the algebraic rules of matrix mechanics follow the undereasiness multiplicative algebra? Jiangsu was a short young man with a long face and a mole on it. He stood up nervously, his mind blank, palms sweating, unsure of what to do. Before entering university, he was a local top scorer in the exams, topping all 3 citywide mock exams, the other's child, in parents' mouth. He was not very likable and nobody liked him, so he devoted everything to learning, believing that only learning could prove his worth. Whenever those who looked down on him had to ask him for help with a problem, he felt a sense of unspoken pride. His self-confidence was built on his academic achievements. But after entering Capital City University, his proud academic performance meant nothing here, there were countless more brilliant than him who often lingered in the library, almost living in it. In order to catch up, Jiangsu started spending time in the library, chewing through the difficult theories. He studied too late last night and forgot that he had Professor Luo's class today, so he didn't do his prep. At Capital City University, if you hadn't done your prep, you wouldn't be able to follow the teacher's pace, you would be left behind. Not to mention, if he couldn't answer, he would fail. Failing, he didn't associate himself with this word at all before attending the university. Now, failure is only a step away. Jiangsu stammered, unsure of how to answer. He lowered his head, not daring to look at Professor Luo and his classmates, feeling that classmates were laughing at him. Seeing this, Professor Luo sighed. Okay, you can sit down. Just as Jiangsu thought this was over, Professor Luo said, you don't have to take the final exam, continue learning this course next year. Jiangsu was struck dumb. What broke Jiangsu down was that Professor Luo called another student to answer and he fluently gave the answer that Luo wanted. The guy was Zhang Su's roommate. In Zhang Su's impression, this person slept all day, but his academic performance was better than everyone's. The gap between people was revealed at this moment, but Jiangsu was unwilling to admit it. Jiangsu lowered his head, distracted. Professor Luo continued his lecture, and the students continued to listen attentively, only he was lost in thought. He felt that everyone was laughing at him, he was the first person in the class to fail, he couldn't lift his head in the future. It would be good if everyone disappeared. Jiangsu murmured. This thought echoed and amplified in his head. With his eyes all red, he suddenly stood up, waved his big hand. Wherever his gaze fell, his classmates disappeared into thin air, their fate unknown. Professor Luo was the first to notice something was wrong. Rolling and crawling to one side, he didn't disappear. Peng Lionhai was a beat slower, realizing that Jiangsu awakened his superpower, but its nature was unknown. Unfortunately, it was too late. He and Xiao Junyi both disappeared. Jiangsu looked at the empty classroom, his face blank. When he realized what had happened, he began to tremble in panic. What had he done? Where had his classmates gone? Had they gone somewhere else, or were they vaporized? He dared not think further. Jiangsu, what have you done? Professor Luo roared. I don't know, I just felt like I sent them to another place. Jiangsu was trembling, he had never been so scared of Professor Luo before. Can you bring them back? It should be possible, I'll try, Jiangsu whispered. At his words, Professor Luo's face softened. Jiangsu furrowed his brows, trying hard to recall the feeling just now. It seems like this. More than 10 minutes passed, and Jiangsu was back to his previous state, slowly rising to his feet and bringing everyone back. What just happened? Why can't I remember anything? Yikes, how come I've suddenly lost more than 10 minutes? The classmates felt like they had been somewhere, but they couldn't remember where. Xiao Junyi's memory paused at the moment before disappearing and then returned here. She too couldn't remember what had happened. She asked Peng Lionhai, how much can you remember? Peng Lionhai frowned, his memory was hazy. I saw a river, that place seemed to have only a river, endless. No, I can't remember anymore. At this point, how could Xiao Junyi not understand that Jiangsu had awakened an extremely rare superpower, banishment to another space? I need to report this to my father urgently. She didn't know that sect hierarch lacked this superpower, she just wanted to tell her father about the superpower of banishment to another space. However, Professor Luo noticed Xiao Junyi's movement, and with a sneer at the corner of his mouth, he crushed her cell phone and threw her aside. The classmates were puzzled by this scene. Who would have thought that there is someone here passing information to the administration, a bunch of fools daring to thwart the future ruler. Who are you? Peng Lionhai felt a chill. As a second-order enhancement ability user, he didn't catch Professor Luo's move. He sensed an extremely terrifying power within Professor Luo. Me. Professor Luo laughed, taking off his disguise. I am the hierarch of the superpower sect. Sect hierarch was thrilled. He used a superpower to test fortune and found out that he had good luck in this classroom at Capital City University. He guessed that he would meet someone who would awaken a rare superpower here. He disguised himself as Professor Luo and gave a lecture, and then tested in class who brought good fortune to him, and the result pointed to Jiangsu. Most superpowers awaken under pressure, and he kept pressuring Jiangsu to make Jiangsu collapse and awaken his superpower. Everything was as he expected. After Jiangsu's superpower awakening, all people disappeared. Sect hierarch was worried that Jiangsu had only awakened a common spatial superpower, so he guided Jiangsu to bring people back. To sect hierarch's delight, those who came back had lost their memory, perfectly matching the description of the superpower of banishment to another space. Chapter 393, Save the Day. It seems like even the heavens are on my side. The sect hierarch laughed heartily. A mysterious force generated from his palm pulled Jiangsu towards him. Even the sect hierarch himself was surprised that he was able to obtain the most mysterious superpower this time, the ability to banish objects to another dimension. Jiangsu felt as if something was gradually being drawn out of his body by the sect hierarch. When he was thrown to one side, he discovered that he had lost his power to make people disappear. What Jiangsu didn't understand was that his whole body had returned to its state 30 minutes earlier, and all the energy and abilities he had gathered during that time had been absorbed by the sect hierarch. Memories belong to the soul. The sect hierarch's power of absorption could devour it, but he purposely avoided consuming the soul. Devouring souls was the equivalent of adding a segment of someone else's memory to one's own. It could lead to mental fragmentation if overdone, a mistake the sect hierarch had made before. At first, it seemed harmless to consume others' memories. But as he absorbed more, his recollection became increasingly chaotic. As a result, he ended up in a mental hospital for more than 5 years. Run! Peng Lionhai shouted. Upon seeing the situation, the people in the room disregarded their studies and ran out of the classroom, desperately calling for help. The sect hierarch didn't care about their actions. The once bustling classroom was now deserted, with only the sect hierarch, Peng Lionhai, and Xiao Junyi remaining. Having obtained the power to banish to other dimensions, he felt that his superpower techniques had nearly reached perfection. He felt as if he were on the verge of creating a world, and even without the other 3 types of superpowers, he was invincible. And there were indeed people here to test his abilities. I possess tens of thousands of superpowers. Once I integrate all the superpowers into one, it can be called an invincible superpower. You fear Peng Lionhai. I can tell you've been observing him for days. Some newcomers named Zhang Li and Bai Hongtu have disrupted my plan at the Beihai branch. As a newcomer from the same batch as them, your abilities should be no less than theirs. Let me test you. Peng Lionhai was unsure whether the sect hierarch was overestimating him. The sect hierarch tossed a few seeds into the air. They grew into trees with the wind, reaching the size of a human and full of abundant foliage in no time. Under the control of the sect hierarch's intention, the trees flew at high speed and attacked Peng Lionhai. Peng Lionhai was merely a level 2 enhancer with superpowers, there was no way for him to evade. He was hit, crashing through several walls before stopping. He spat out a mouthful of blood, completely dazed and disoriented. This week, the sect hierarch was taken aback. Peng Lionhai was unexpectedly feeble. It seems I have overestimated you. Xiao Juni employed illusion superpowers, attempting to make the sect hierarch fall into an hallucination. However, the hierarch also had illusion superpowers which were 100 times stronger than Xiao Juni's. It's like bringing firewood to a bonfire, you both are mere pawns. The sect hierarch lost interest in the two. I'll grant you a swift end. The hierarch flicked his finger, and one end of the giant tree sharpened, ready to attack the duo once again. The sharpened giant tree resembled an ancient battering ram, but its impact was much more terrifying. It could blast open any door, and the consequences of such a powerful force hurtling towards someone were evident. Suddenly, globules of water enveloped the giant tree, slowing down its speed until it eventually halted. Wondered who it could be, turns out it is the dear head of the higher agency. The fact that the head of the higher agency had arrived did not come as a surprise to the sect hierarch. His clairvoyance superpower revealed that the head was in the vicinity. Once the head learned of the commotion here, he immediately rushed over, and the sect hierarch saw all of this. How come, not playing house with those superhumans, and instead, came looking for me? Today, I am determined to defeat you and avenge my brethren. The head was fuming on seeing the sect hierarch. He had lost too many brothers to the hierarch. His rise to the position of the head of the agency was not due to purchasing people's hearts with the stone to gold ability, instead, it was due to his unshakable strength. However, the sect hierarch didn't hold the head in high regard. He scoffed. Owing to the lack of talent in the agency, a pompous person like you ends up being the hero. Managing just a single superpower, yet having the audacity to spout off nonsense before me. Without wasting more words, the head pointed his finger, and a very fine, fast water column sprayed out. This was sharper than any available cutting machine in the market. So sharp that not only could it cut a person, it could also split a diamond in two. The head was a level 5 water controller superhuman. The space around the sect hierarch distorted and the straight water column curved, grazing past the hierarch's body and piercing through the wall. With such mediocre abilities, don't embarrass yourself. The head aimed his hand sharply towards the sect hierarch, hoping to extract the water from his body, leaving him a dry corpse. There were countless superhumans who had succumbed to this strategy. The sect hierarch laughed lightly, completely unfazed. To the head's surprise, he found that the hierarch's physical body was shockingly powerful. Every bit of water in his body was locked tightly, and he couldn't extract a single drop. With a light leap, the hierarch got close to the head and punched him in the chin, sending him into a mid-air somersault. Luckily, the head used water to block this hit just before the sect hierarch's fist reached him. Otherwise, he would have been severely injured, if not dead. How is this possible? How can your body be so strong? From their brief exchange, the head knew that the sect hierarch was highly proficient in the field of enhancement superpowers. You guys have never paid attention to enhancement superhumans, thinking that as long as you keep your distance from them, it's enough. I, on the other hand, have always focused on training my enhancement superpower from the very beginning. Now, I don't even know if my enhancement superpower has reached the 6th or 7th level. The head thought the sect hierarch was bluffing. He formed a whirl of rapidly spinning water, cutting towards the hierarch. This time, the hierarch didn't dodge. He was hit twice, but his clothes remained intact. Even my clothes, enhanced by superpower, are not broken by this. As he spoke, the sect hierarch threw another punch at the head, hitting him in the stomach. The head choked, vomiting bile. Seeing this, the sect hierarch shook his head in disappointment. Too weak. Is this the so-called strongest superhuman? He lost interest, deciding not to prolong the fight. With a wave of his palm, he created a massive wall of air that had the power to crush a person to death. Peng Lionhai and Xiao Junyi closed their eyes in fear. They couldn't imagine how they would look after death. They considered themselves lucky if even a piece of their flesh remained intact. The invisible wall of air was halted as if it had hit an invisible mountain, unable to move even an inch further. The strength behind this is so weak compared to when Zhongli slapped me on the back of my head. Laid-back voice permeated the room as Bai Hongtu appeared, yawning, and blew a breath of air, dissipating the wall of air. Though I've seen you through my divine sense, this is the first time we meet in person. Not only Bai Hongtu, but even Zhong Li was present there, munching on candied hawthorns. He and Bai Hongtu were strolling in the capital city when they became aware of a commotion in the university. With one stride, they arrived here. They wanted to save Peng Lionhai and the others initially but were beaten to the punch by the head. Then they quietly watched as the head took a beating. Thanks to the two of you for saving our lives. Through the battle, the head realized there was a huge gap between him and the sect hierarch. The hierarch was not someone he could defeat. He took Peng Lionhai and the others away voluntarily. Zhong Li and Bai Hongtu stood casually, showing no signs of preparing for battle. It was this casual demeanor that made the sect hierarch feel pressured, and a few droplets of cold sweat breached his forehead. He had mastered nearly all superpowers, and there were 98 space-related superpowers which he had trained to at least level 5. He had also trained his clairvoyance superpower to level 6. Even then, he was unable to see how these two had come here. Also, what did this man named Zhong Li mean when he said that he had seen him through the divine sense? Could it be possible that he was being surveilled without his knowledge? The idea of being watched was inconceivable to the sect hierarch, a thought that frightened him. Chapter 394. Just by looking, you can tell this Zhong Li can't fight. The sect hierarch could not imagine the day when he would be under surveillance. The method was inevitably terrifying. For someone beyond his understanding, sect hierarch encountered only once. The visitor from the sky 60 years ago. Despite sect hierarch appearing middle-aged, his actual age was indeterminable. Having absorbed the immortal power, his lifespan was prolonged, witnessing the rise and fall of multiple feudal nations. He was an adept living on the fringe of history, the most mysterious of all. Only until the unification of the world to open modern society did he start to establish the power-absorbing sect. The visitor self-proclaimed as Du Yi, and after meeting him, the sect hierarch felt his unfathomability, where 1,000 years of life experience still seemed childish compared to him. Du Yi merely conversed a few thoughts, encouraged a few words, patted him on the shoulder, and disappeared. Unbeknownst to the sect hierarch, when Du Yi first arrived at Wei Jiu world and saw the prosperity, he felt uncomfortable. This contrasted sharply with his imagination of a broken mountainscape and withered universe. He wanted to revise his plans to initiate a new round of world destruction, but changed his mind after meeting the sect hierarch. Through 2 months of observation, Du Yi observed the sect hierarch as a powerful, ambitious, stubborn individual with unlimited rule but limited governing capacity. Such individuals were destined to disrupt the Wei Jiu world, causing catastrophic damage to the ecosystem. So, Du Yi did not take further action. Du Yi longed for someone who could relieve his burden, who could destroy all beings without his assistance, thus reducing his workload significantly. Unfortunately, there weren't many such people. After Du Yi, the sect hierarch encountered someone else he couldn't foresee. He suspected these two people were from the same place as Du Yi. The sect hierarch activated his power to test the possible outcomes of the battle, but the result was blank. He received the same result when testing Du Yi. The sect hierarch no longer held back and activated all of his 6th-tier abilities. When he battled the Director General, he hadn't even used 1/10 of his power. Return of thousands of thunderbolts. The sky was overcast with roaring thunder. Green thunderbolts were about to pour down. The dense thunder plasma could split the whole city into charcoal. Zhong Li looked up and glanced at the dark clouds, causing them to dissipate. Eye of the hurricane. A hurricane appeared in the sky. At the center of the hurricane looked like an eye, with a level 17 wind force raging, the wind speed equivalent to a high-speed rail. No building on land could withstand this kind of power. Freeze. Bai Hongtu commanded, using a heavenly spell to freeze the hurricane. Space rupture. Space fragmented like a spider web. Zhong Li waved his hand casually, and space returned to its initial smoothness. Solar inferno. A burning sun in the sky caused the land to crack and the vegetation to wither and ignite. Freeze sky and earth. Bai Hongtu used Dao, freezing the forged sun instantly, even the flames were frozen inside. 500 times gravity. Zhongli moved around naturally, unaffected. Nuclear fusion. The sect hierarch threw out a stone lion. The atomic nucleus inside the stone lion split, releasing extremely terrifying energy and temperature. Bai Hongtu stretched out his big hand, held the stone lion in his hand, and the explosion occurred in his palm, without any loss of power. Celestial meteorite. With the sect hierarch's loud shout, the world's karma subtly changed. A slight deviation appeared in the orbit of a certain asteroid, rubbing against the atmosphere, carrying light and fire, aiming to hit Zhongli. Zhongli lightly fanned it, flashing the asteroid back to its original orbit. Don't embarrass yourself at this level. Bai Hongtu swung a fist. The sect hierarch used spatial power, creating a small space in front of him, trying to block Bai Hongtu. But Bai Hongtu's punch was too heavy and strong. It broke through the small space and hammered the sect hierarch's chest, making his heart stop for a few seconds. Are you capable at all? You want to rule the world at this level? Bai Hongtu scorned. The sect hierarch was blown away. Zhongli appeared behind him, mimicking Bai Hongtu, punching the sect hierarch back in Bai Hongtu's direction. The sect hierarch was like a volleyball, flying around between the two. It's you who forced me, my tongue. The sect hierarch was enraged. Just as he was about to talk tough, he bit his tongue. Have you ever fought with anyone? How dare you speak during a fight? Zhongli and Bai Hongtu found the sect hierarch to display a lack of tactical knowledge. Don't talk during fights, do not use flashy moves, protect your storage ring during fights, and don't consider Zhongli as your opponent. All these are known to any practitioner from the 9 provinces. The sect hierarch's rage ultimately proved useful. He gave a remarkable performance, using spatial power to move 100 meters away. Then Zhongli and Bai Hongtu changed places to fight him. The sect hierarch kept changing places, and the two of them continually swapped locations to do the beating. The director general below, upon seeing this, believed he had stepped into an illusion. Was this still the notorious, invincible, mysterious sect hierarch? The sect hierarch changed strategies and used the ghostification power that made his body temporarily untouchable. Bai Hongtu missed, letting the sect hierarch escape. This odd power indeed resembles the invisible in standing Dao method of my Dao sect. The sect hierarch panted heavily. He felt his prided robust body was like elastic clay in front of these two, manipulated at will. You two are fighting one, unfair, dare to fight one-on-one. The sect hierarch finally understood that he couldn't possibly fight two people simultaneously. Divide and conquer was the best strategy. So, who do you want to fight first? The sect hierarch looked at Bai Hongtu and then at Zhongli. Experience told him that those with peculiar personalities had stronger abilities. Someone like Bai Hongtu, who laughed and joked, was extremely terrifying. You would never know his strength. Conversely, Zhongli, a typically serious person, had power not exceeding too many specifications. Zhongli, you be my opponent. Bai Hongtu gave a thumbs up and praised. Sharp eyes. You recognized at a glance that he is weaker than me. The sect hierarch remained silent, removing 2 reinforcing axes from his storage space. Zhongli pondered. As a sign of respect, after finishing the candied ha, he wiped the sugar from the corner of his mouth and chose to fight with the leftover skewer. Take my axe. The sect hierarch shouted, gathered strength, swung his arm, and wielded both axes. Zhongli leisurely sidestepped, breached the sect hierarch's approach and casually blocked with the skewer. The collision sounded louder than thunder. The sect hierarch was shocked to find that when his axe hit the stick, it notched, while the stick remained intact. The sect hierarch panicked, using the plethora of odd powers in conjunction with the axes, wishing to create a slight chance of victory. However, no matter how hard the sect hierarch tried, Zhongli seemed to handle it all effortlessly, not showing the slightest hint of concern. The sect hierarch raged wildly, but it was to no avail. Zhongli stepped forward and stabbed the sect hierarch, leaving him chilled. This wasn't a fatal injury to the sect hierarch. He tightly grasped Zhongli's arm, the bloody corner of his mouth revealing a smiling curve. I finally caught you. Power absorption. Chapter 395. 10 seconds of energy. Additional update. The sect hierarch finally seized this opportunity, using his power of absorption as if he saw the dawn of victory. Whether it was eating, dressing, residing, or traveling, all had become part of Zhongli's cultivation. After Zhongli entered the Mahayana realm, he was constantly training and becoming stronger at every moment. But now, Zhongli had ceased to become stronger. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. As the time passed second by second, a shocked Zhang Li realized that ever since he was hit by the sect hierarch's power of absorption, he had ceased becoming stronger. He wasn't getting stronger for a full 10 seconds. Zhang Li was just amazed, but the sect hierarch was terrified. In the past, when he used his power of absorption, draining others' energy and abilities felt like inserting a straw into a glass of water and sipping the water out effortlessly. However, absorbing from Zhang Li felt like inserting a straw into a concrete floor, and despite nearly suffocating due to the lack of oxygen, all he managed to absorb were a few dust particles scattered on the concrete. What was even scarier was that while others' energy was only the size of a glass of water, Zhang Li's energy was bottomless, deeper than the ocean. After his split personality fully recovered, the sect hierarch started suffering from several psychological conditions, like depression and deep-sea phobia. When he was absorbing from Zhang Li, he nearly had a deep-sea phobia attack. As the sect hierarch absorbed Zhang Li's energy, a peculiar equilibrium was achieved. Zhang Li was becoming stronger, while the sect hierarch was sucking out the part that was making Zhang Li stronger, which resulted in Zhang Li not getting stronger. The sect hierarch couldn't completely absorb Zhang Li. After 10 seconds passed, he had reached his limit of absorption and stopped. He was overjoyed. The energy gained in those 10 seconds was enough to upgrade all of his abilities to the 7th level. However, the hierarch soon realized that he was too greedy, he couldn't absorb the energy from those 10 seconds. His body turned red and swelled, as disorderly and brutal energy battered his body. He used all his healing abilities to mend his body, but he realized it was futile. This experience was like a pedestrian being run over by a truck, resurrected, then run over again, an endless cycle. A massive energy spewed out from the mouth of the hierarch. Initially, the hierarch wanted to use this energy to attack Zhang Li, but the energy burst out from his body uncontrollably, forcing the hierarch to open his mouth and throw his head back. A sky-blue beam, full of life, sprayed out into the starry sky. Even though it was still daytime, the radiance of the sky-blue light was brighter than the sun. Just like the brilliance of the sun obscures the stars during the day, the energy blocked out the sunlight, casting everything in its shadow. The entirety of the Waigu continent was captivated by this extraordinary sight, causing numerous people to look up in awe, take pictures, and leaving countless astronomers wishing they could gouge their eyes out, disregarding this phenomenon that violated the laws of nature. This phenomenon could overturn the entire field of astronomy. If someone were to publicly use their abilities, the director's first reaction would always be how to cover it up. But at this moment, his first reaction was to curse in shock. He didn't have to worry about hiding anything. Firstly, this phenomenon was too outrageous. Anyone with eyes could see it, hiding it was pointless. Secondly, even if they admitted that this phenomenon was caused by supernatural abilities, the public wouldn't believe it. As the hierarch this powerful, the director was shivering with fear. He saw that it was the hierarch who was emitting the beam, and thought that this was the hierarch's ultimate ability. Even scarier was what happened next. After the blue light beam penetrated the atmosphere, its power did not diminish at all. Any passing stars would explode upon contact. Astronomers wanted to bang their heads and forget the spectacle they were witnessing. How would they explain this? A linear black hole. The most unlucky person was a certain graduate student whose thesis was about the trajectory of a specific planet. He had tirelessly collected data and observed astronomical phenomena night after night for over a year and was finally about to defend his thesis. The planet had now vanished. After the hierarch completely spent the 10-second energy, the blue light beam transformed from a straight line into a line segment, continuing on its original path. Coincidentally, the Waigu continent was beside the boundary wall. The blue light beam did not travel for long before it collided with and broke through the wall, persisting even amidst the tempest of the void before it finally dissipated. This scene was observed by astronomers and marked the first time the border of the universe had been observed from the world of Waigu. It was of enormous significance. However, this scene contradicted existing theories, leaving astronomers scratching their heads and contemplating new theories. Bai Hongtu realized he needed to devise a new plan to defeat Zhang Li. He doubted that not even his heart link could block such a preposterous attack. Could it be possible that I can't even break Zhang Li's defense? Upon seeing Zhang Li, the only thing left in the hierarch's eyes was not the desire to fight, but a deep-seated fear. What kind of person would have such an immense amount of energy? Even if the energy he just experienced was only 1/10 of his, it was horrifying enough. Monster, the hierarch trembled as he stared at Zhang Li. He finally realized that while he was toying with the director, Zhang Li, too, was merely toying with him. There was only one way to deal with such a person. Exile into the void. This was the first time the hierarch was using this ability since acquiring it, and he was unsure of the outcome. Zhongli felt everything around him slowing down and instantly understood what was happening. Someone was employing the power of time to enter the river of time. Exile into the void was not a spatial ability, but a temporal one. Where is the entrance? Zhongli released his divine sense, searching all around. If there was an opportunity to enter the river of time, he would definitely take it. Eventually, he found a small gap nearby, the size of a needle's eye. The hierarch didn't know how to make use of this ability and couldn't see the process of opening the entrance to the river of time. All he did was release as much energy as he could to make Zhongli disappear. He drained all his energy to expand the small gap into the size of a fist. If he were absorbing from an ordinary person, he could casually use this ability to open a large gap. The gap had a suction force that could pull people into it. However, this time he was absorbing from Zhongli. This gap is a bit small. Zhongli was in a predicament. Tentatively, he stretched out one hand and pried the slot wider. You can really pry it open. Zhongli was pleased. With both hands, he pried the gap open until it was big enough for a person to pass through, then stepped inside. As Zhongli entered the river of time, the gap closed. Ha 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 ha, the hierarch laughed loudly. No matter how powerful Zhongli was, he had still been banished to the void by him. Without his permission, Zhongli would not be able to return. When the hierarch was using his ability, only Zhongli retained his consciousness. Everyone else didn't see what Zhongli had done. They only knew that the hierarch had activated an ability and Zhongli had disappeared. Damn it, it was the power of time. Although Bai Hongtu hadn't seen the process, he had witnessed the members of the great Zhou dynasty family use the power of time several times before. He was all too familiar with this sensation. Zhongli, you damned dog, why didn't you bring me along for such a fun activity? At least Zhongli had visited the river of time once. Him, Bai Hongtu, hadn't even visited once. Bai Hongtu was resentful, demanding that the hierarch use his ability to banish him to the void as well. You want to save him? Stop dreaming. I consumed all of my energy and used the ability to banish him to the void, which I can no longer use, as the price to imprison him in there. No one will be able to open the void again. The hierarch burst out into laughter, fell backward and died. To banish Zhongli, he did not just use all his energy, but drained every ounce of his life force as well. Chapter 396. Return to the River of Time. Indeed, the so-called different space is actually the Time River. Mortals who come here will lose their memories due to their unfamiliarity with the way of time, leaving their minds unoccupied and void in this place. Zhongli stood on the bank of the Time River, watching the rushing river flow past, murmuring quietly to himself. He had visited the Time River once before, where the past and present sword transformed into a white fish said it had seen him downstream in the future. That meant he was destined to return here, so he specifically learned much about the Time River from Gigi. But this time it's probably not the visit the past and present sword was referring to. Zhongli bent down to observe the Time River. The place he was in was the Time River of the Wei Jiu world, whereas the past and present sword had met in him from the future in the Time River of the JoJo world. Different worlds have different time flows and are separated by boundaries and voids, resulting in different time rivers. There are heavy walls on both banks of the river, feeling like cotton candy to the touch. The other side of the wall is the Time River of another world. For the people of the great Zhou dynasty family, this wall seems like an invincible immortal artifact, hard to shake. But Zhongli felt he could overturn it. However, he was warned by Ji Kongkong and Gigi that the Time River reflects reality and can also influence reality. Knocking down the wall means two worlds will become interconnected, and no one knows what will happen. There is uncertainty in both fortune and disaster. Follow the advice of the professionals. Zhongli stopped paying attention to the wall issue. The Time River was still shrouded in chaotic fog, obscuring the past and the future. Zhongli could only see as far as he walked. If it was Gigi here, he could only travel 200 years upstream along the Time River. After that, he would meet with enormous resistance and could not proceed any further. If Bai Hongtu was here, he would have been unable to move even an inch. Only those who comprehend the way of time can move through the Time River. Zhongli, however, was an exception. The limitations of the Time River were not applicable to him. He could wander freely between the past and the future. Zhongli went upstream of the Time River, which is the past of Wei Jiu world. He walked with his hands behind his back, intermittently looking down to observe the history of the Wei Jiu world, finding it much more vivid than the cold words recorded in history books. As he walked further into the past, the conflict between ordinary people and those with special abilities intensified. When special powers first appeared, they created a clear division between ordinary people and the powerful. As he walked, Zhang Li pondered. Actually, the gap between special ability users and ordinary people was not so great. The widest chasm existed in the cultivation world. A first-order special ability individual could possibly kill a fourth-order one, but could one at the Qi cultivation stage ever kill a nascent soul stage practitioner? Of course not. The Qi cultivation, foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, divinity transformation, soul melding, and transcendence tribulation stages, these 7 stages of cultivation were like 7 insurmountable chasms. Cultivation. The power resides within oneself. Zhang Li remembered the ancient world, a place filled with intense struggles in the cultivation world. Zhang Li had been to many worlds, but most of them were technological. The only genuine cultivation world was the ancient world. The Ring universe, where martial arts are practiced, had powerful martial artists, but the pinnacle of power was limited. Even swarming tactics could pose threats, hardly a true world where power resides within oneself. Only worlds like JoJo World and Ancient World could be considered true realms where the power resides within oneself. The biggest problem with the cultivation world lies in the fact that the top cultivators are too powerful, and they have a direct influence on the trajectory of the world. When the gap between people becomes too large, it signifies that everyone's value is no longer equal. Human life becomes cheap, and high-level cultivators may look down on their lower-level counterparts as if looking at pigs and dogs. Zhang Li tutted in disapproval. The more he thought about it, the more he felt JoJo was extremely unique. Zhang Li stopped in his tracks, no longer dwelling on the issue. Because he had arrived almost 6,000 years in the past, the time when the heavenly demons from the outer realm had instigated the humans to unlock the wielding of special abilities. A heavenly demon, whose appearance was unclear, descended, scanning the world with his divine sense. Humans were not the supreme species of this era. They were threatened by floods and ferocious beasts, yet their intelligence and capacity for reproduction made them prevalent across Weijiu world. TCH, there are too many of them to eradicate all at once. They will have to die slowly. The heavenly demon was quite vexed with the census results. The population of Weijiu world barely met the criteria for a slow mass extinction. If it was 2 or 3 10% more negligible, he could kill them directly without worrying about them collectively visualizing and creating something he would fear before they die. Consider yourselves lucky. The heavenly demon roamed around the Weijiu world for half a month, finally deriving a plan to cause the human race to die off slowly. In a world with scarce spiritual energy, cultivation will not reach substantial heights. The demon race of the immortal realm had offspring here, but after generations, their bloodline has diluted to the verge of non-existence, transforming demon beasts back into ordinary wild beasts. The 5 elements birth and subdue each other, creating all things, and most humans have 5 elements spiritual roots. Since this is the case, I will select a select few lucky ones, cause a reaction inside their 5 elements spiritual roots, and give birth to an unusual energy. Although they will not become too strong, it will provide enough differentiation. When differences appear between people, it means contrast and conflict emerges. Human desire will amplify this contrast and contradiction until it eventually evolves into uncontrollable chaos. Well, I've made up my mind. Zhang Li stood up to head to an earlier time node, the time when the steps to immortality in Weijiu world had broken. Zhang Li traveled about 200 years distance to find his goal. I'm curious to see how the steps to immortality disappeared. Zhang Li squatted down, his expression solemn. 6,000 years ago, Weijiu world was in the tribal age. Their language was barely matured, and they had just abandoned rope knot recording. Cultivation and special abilities were still unknown in this era. Humans were not the rulers of the world then, so it's not surprising that Weijiu world's history books did not concretely record how the heavenly demons opened their special abilities, let alone how the steps to immortality broke. In such a scene, the verbal stories passed down to 6,000 years later have already morphed into indistinguishable legends that vastly differ from what actually happened. People back then were still struggling for survival. They had no idea that the immortal realm had built steps to immortality to give them the opportunity to become immortals. Even less did they think that on the Time River, there was a pair of eyes watching them. The golden steps to immortality were hidden in the sky, existing between reality and illusion, one end connected to Weijiu world, the other to the immortal realm. When cultivators reached the transcendence tribulation stage, they would faintly sense the existence of the steps to immortality. The sensing was not clear, and only those who had become immortals could see and move freely through them. There was no one in Wei Jiu world at that time who noticed the existence of the steps to immortality. Although Zhongli wasn't at the transcendence tribulation stage and had not yet become an immortal, he could see everything clearly. This was the first time he had seen the complete steps to immortality. Soon, an abrupt change occurred. Chapter 397, Emperor Shun. A massive hand stretched out from the void, casting a darkness that eclipsed the sun, misleading the ignorant humans into thinking it was an eclipse caused by a heavenly dog devouring the moon. Blood dripping from the palm of the large hand, where flickering runes pulsed with prophetic symbols. Zhongli recognized at least a dozen of these runes, each representing a different Dao. The rest of the runes also represented Dao, but these Dao did not spread in Jojo, so Zhongli could not recognize them. There are no runes for the Dao of time. The large hand gripped the runes in the palm interacted with, and neutralized the celestial ascension stairs, causing it to melt away rapidly, like snow meeting hot water. Within a few short breaths, the celestial ascension stairs vanished without a trace. Zhongli speculated that the celestial ascension stairs of other worlds also disappeared in this manner, leaving only fragments behind, which he happened to discover. Who is the master of this large hand? Its ability to make the celestial ascension stairs vanish with a single move confirmed for Zhongli that the master of the hand was an entity far surpassing the heavenly immortals. Is it an extra-dimensional heavenly demon or an immortal? Zhongli wished to see the owner of the large hand, but the owner existed within the void, extending only a hand into the Vaiguda world. In the river of time, images could only be seen from within their own world and not the void. Zhongli instinctively wanted to leap into the river of time and explore the epic in question, but he restrained himself. Instead of going back 6,000 years in the Vaiguda world, it would be better to return to the Jojo world 9,000 years ago. Zhongli continued walking upstream with a heavy heart. Halfway through his step, he sensed a shift in the land beneath him. Although shrouded by chaotic mist, he could vaguely perceive what lay before him. It was no longer apt to describe what lay ahead as the river of time, it was more akin to the sea of time. The sea of time was like the origin of time itself, with each river of time being a tributary of this sea. The river of time flowed from the sea of time, and with varying rates of flow, it diverged into a unique timeline, separated from the other rivers of time by thick white walls. Zhongli understood. This was an era when the celestial ascension stairs still existed. During this time, the flow of time in all other worlds was synchronized with the immortal realm. But after the celestial ascension stairs disappeared, each world returned to its original flow of time, which was represented here by the splitting of the sea. The riverbanks ended abruptly. From here on, it was all ocean, with nowhere for Zhongli to tread. Zhongli crouched down and began talking to the white fish in the sea. Could you all please let me step on you? I want to get to the other side. Unfortunately, the white fish had no intelligence and could not understand Zhongli, leaving him behind as they swam away, tail fins swaying. Just when Zhongli was at a loss and planning on diving into the sea, a voice reverberated beside his ear. I would advise against that. Without knowing the exact time and location you wish to arrive at, you might end up millions of years away from your desired destination. Zhongli looked up to see a person rowing towards him in a small boat, the mist parting automatically as the boat reached it. There were not only white fish in this world, but also people. You must be the 72nd human emperor of Jojo world, Zhongli. The approaching figure was impeccably dressed in olden styles. He greeted Zhongli courteously, with a friendly smile and an intimately congenial manner. I have seen you on the river of time before. Today is our first formal meeting. It owes to your strike that I am here today. It knocked the past and present sword into the river across space and time. Zhongli returned the greeting, a conjecture forming in his mind. The visitor opened his eyes, his double pupils, like that of Gigi, appearing capable of penetrating the past, present, and future. You must have heard of my title, Zhongli. My name is Ji Shun. I founded the great Zhou dynasty. In my era, people called me Emperor Shun. Emperor Shun. Zhongli was taken aback. He had not expected to meet this renowned time manipulator in the river of time. This was a significant figure from 30,000 years ago who single-handedly established the prosperous Great Zhou dynasty. But upon reflection, it seemed quite reasonable. Emperor Shun had once transformed from a white fish into human form and come to Jojo world. Although his form had changed, his understanding of the Tao of time remained. After his transformation, he could, of course, move freely between Jojo world and the river of time. In the 30,000 years that followed, numerous dynasties were buried in the dust of history. Some kingdoms experienced ups and downs within their power structure, almost getting annihilated. Only the Great Zhou remained continuously prosperous, always ranking among the top 3 dynasties in Zhou. The fundamental reason lay in the well-established and impartial laws of the Great Zhou. While they could not ensure the best outcomes for the kingdom, they did prevent the worst. The birth of the laws of the Great Zhou, and the legal framework that contributed to the kingdom's fate, were all principles established by Emperor Shun. The continued prosperity of the Great Zhou owed much to Emperor Shun. The fact that my title can elicit such a reaction from the famous human Emperor Zhongli proves that my name, Emperor Shun, is not empty. Emperor Shun was visibly happy to meet Zhongli. What brings Emperor Shun here? Emperor Shun didn't answer but instead asked, does human Emperor Zhongli have a way to leave the River of Time? Zhongli gave him a thought and cautiously replied, could I break through with a punch? Emperor Shun was relieved he came. Otherwise, the River of Time might have been breached. He was well aware of Zhongli's formidable strength, more than capable of breaking through the River of Time. Haha, I was just joking. The River of Time matters greatly. How could I recklessly destroy it? Zhongli was well aware of the gravity of the situation. My original plan was to return to the past, clarify a few things, locate the Great Zhou royal family of that era, and ask them to open up a passage for me to leave. But since Emperor Shun is here, you're here to help me move on from the River of Time, right? Emperor Shun quickly responded, please don't refer to me as you. It's too much honor for me to bear. Yes, I did come to help you move on from the River of Time, but not from here. Then where? I believe what you most want to see is Jojo from 9,000 years ago. I can take you there. There are probably many doubts in your heart, and while I can answer some of them, I think it's best for you to see it with your own eyes. I appreciate it very much. Emperor Shun's arrival eased some of Zhongli's worries. He no longer needed to fret about the ideal swimming technique to use from Jojo. Human Emperor Zhongli, please board. As Zhongli drifted on the ocean in the boat, he passed by countless mouths of the River of Time where countless whitefish swam. I must thank the Yin-Yang Heaven Seal for enabling me to gain consciousness and stand out from my peers. Zhongli was curious. How did the past and present sword turn into a fish? You don't understand the Tao of Time very well, so I'll give you a simple explanation. The creatures of the River of Time, or white fish, are immortal, for there's no concept of death here. The past and present sword was created from my bone, so it's a native creature of the River of Time. When it returned to the River of Time, the river itself helped it reconstruct its body. Zhongli felt that Emperor Shun was indeed Gigi's ancestor. His first sentence reflected his striking similarity to Gigi. This is the place. Emperor Shun stopped at a mouth of the River of Time. This will take you back 9,000 years to Jojo, at the correct time and in the correct location. Zhongli, you can jump in from here. Chapter 398, 9,000 years ago. Zhongli looked down at the sea. From here, one could see the Jojo world that had grown rampantly 9,000 years before, with Transcendence Tribulation stages appearing ceaselessly. I just need to jump in. I should remind Emperor Zhong first. What has happened here is history. I know your mana reaches the heavens and no one can match it, but history has its own conclusion. If you return to the past, you can only watch without intervening. Otherwise, history will deviate, and we both will enter a parallel world. Does Emperor Shun also know about parallel worlds? In my survey of the past and present, witnessing eternity, I naturally know things that few others do. There are several causes of parallel worlds. The main reason is that an individual may have multiple personalities. This person, capable of affecting the course of the world and history, might make different choices when faced with the same situation, causing time to deviate and leading to the creation of parallel worlds. The second reason is when someone travels to the past and alters history, leading to the creation of a parallel world. I don't know how to travel between different parallel worlds. Once we go to another parallel world, there's no going back for the two of us. I am helping you because you are a citizen of Zhou's dynasty, and after becoming the human emperor, you led by example and respect Zhou's laws. Don't trick me into a parallel world. I understand that. Before setting off, Zhongli turned around and said, I also have a favor to ask Emperor Shun. Please speak, Emperor Zhong. I have visited a world of zombies. There, time has restarted, and I cannot directly intervene until time returns to normal. Can Emperor Shun make the time in that world return to normal? This shouldn't be a problem. This is Jojo, 9,000 years ago. It's amazing, the immortal ascending staircase still exists. One can freely travel to and from the immortal realm. Zhongli arrived in the past, looked at the immortal ascending staircase, and was deeply moved. He had dedicated all of his energy and effort to gathering pieces of the immortal ascending staircase, just so he could go to the immortal realm. Had he been born in this era, he should have been able to freely travel to the immortal realm. A single province actually has 2 transcendence tribulation stages. Zhang Li used his divine sense to cover an entire province, and he was surprised by the number of transcendence tribulation stages. Elder Cheng Kun once told me that at this time, Jojo had 20 transcendence tribulation stages. This is Jojo's greatest period. I don't know how much time there is left until the immortal ascending staircase breaks. Suddenly, Zhang Li's eyebrows furrowed. He discovered that 1,000 miles away, a demon cultivator was openly performing a blood sacrifice. An entire city of people was wailing, cursing, begging for mercy, then disappearing in a puff of smoke, becoming sacrificial offerings for the demon to increase his mana. The Jojo of this era truly is savage. Such a thing would simply be impossible in the era that Zhang Li came from. Zhang Li flew in the air, and in an instant, he reached the scene and saw a demon cultivator laughing uncontrollably. Sure enough, it's more beneficial than harmful for ordinary mortals to comprehend the spiritual energy chart. How can typical mortals be as replenishing as those at the 3rd stage of Qi cultivation? However, after absorbing the lives of millions of people, I can step into the middle transcendence tribulation stage from the early transcendence tribulation stage. With this, becoming an immortal is imminent. This man was one of the 20 transcendence tribulation stage cultivators in Jojo, the demon cultivator Li Wu. Old demon Li, you're conducting a blood sacrifice again. Another transcendence tribulation cultivator heard about the demon's movements and came quickly to check. He was furious to see the scene in front of him. Who do you think you are? It turns out to be Yuan Shang. What, do you have any more advice? Li Wu said arrogantly, not putting Yuan Shang in his eyes. Both were at the transcendence tribulation stage, neither high nor low. What if the other party was furious? It was just impotent rage. Li Wu looked down on Yuan Shang and the mysterious heaven sect he represented. The mysterious heaven sect claimed to act on behalf of heaven, advocated saving the world and rescuing people from suffering, and compiled the spiritual energy chart so that everyone could practice cultivation. Among them, this Yuan Shang was the most outrageous, saying that one should not practice the demon path, instead relying on their own efforts to ascend to immortality. Ridiculous. The people I've killed for my power, isn't that effort too? Old demon Li, you dare to massacre my citizens of the Emperor of Heaven origin. The Emperor of Heaven origin of this era appeared, dressed in a yellow robe, with awe-inspiring momentum, radiating the fluctuations of the transcendence tribulation stage. Hey, it's just a piece of trash that barely touches the edge of the transcendence tribulation stage by relying on the national luck, and dares to bark in front of me. Li Wu chuckled lightly. Aren't you afraid that I will report this matter to the immortal realm and notify the founding ancestral from the Emperor of Heaven origin dynasty? The Emperor of Heaven origin threatened. Even if the national luck of the Emperor of Heaven origin dynasty encouraged struggles, this was not the way to do it. The disappearance of a major city caused significant damage to the national luck of the Emperor of Heaven origin dynasty. Are you comparing backgrounds? I, Li Wu, have a heavenly immortal in the immortal realm as my master, and what about your Emperor of Heaven origin dynasty? Your founding ancestor was just a heavenly immortal. Let's see, will my master stand up for me, or will your founding ancestor stand up for your many generations of descendants? Li Wu didn't care. When comparing cultivation strength, no one in Jojo could contain him. When it came to background, he had a huge supporter in the immortal realm. Who could tolerate him? The Emperor of Heaven origin was so angry that he gritted his teeth. In cultivating in Jojo, talent, cultivation strength, and background were all indispensable. Missing any aspect could lead to failure on the road to becoming immortal. Even if the immortal realm stipulates that they should not interfere with the lower realm, if a real immortal secretly intervened, what could the immortal realm do about it? Could they eliminate the immortal? Yuan Shang didn't waste words with Li Wu anymore and directly made his move. His mysterious heaven sect also had a substantial background in the immortal realm, not fearing the person behind Li Wu. The three tacitly flew into the cosmos before battling. If they were to fight in Jojo, who knows how many people would die, which could truly anger the founding ancestor of the Tianyuan Emperor dynasty. 3 transcendence tribulation stage cultivators were battling in the cosmos. Their bodies were enormous, and their actions were full of vigorous energy. Their vital energies surged like a torrent, causing the sun and the moon to darken and stars to shatter, leaving all living beings trembling with fear. When Bai Hongtu and the others took action at the Zhou dynasty's spiritual treasure convention, it attracted the residents of Zhou to watch, admiring their power, and hoping to learn more about the methods of the Transcendence Tribulation stage. However, in this era, people simply hoped for the battle to end as quickly as possible. Yuan Shang was frustrated. The Emperor of Heaven origin had shown up, but not put any real effort into the fight. It was clear that the Emperor was putting on a show for the people, sending a message to other demon cultivators. The Emperor of Heaven Origin's dynasty was not to be trifled with. The Emperor of Heaven Origin didn't even take out his magic gourd. Li Wu was arrogant and had the qualifications to be so. Yuan Shang and the Emperor of Heaven Origin both could do nothing to him. Enough, do you want people to laugh at us? A deep voice interrupted the battle between the three. Seeing the newcomer, the three stopped fighting and paid their respects. Golden Taoist. Golden Taoist shook his head and looked in the direction of the immortal ascending staircase. We have been cultivating until now, all for the sake of becoming immortals. Why should we fight to death? Li Wu indeed did something wrong, but they demonic cultivators rely on this for cultivation. His actions can be considered understandable. Yuan Shang, you're always like this. You're not that capable, but you always like to flex your muscles. Do you know how many demonic cultivators wish to assassinate you? This matter should end here, by my advice. In the future, we're all going to become immortals and enter the immortal realm. The cultivators of Zhou should stick together in the immortal realm. You're stiffening the relationship so much, do you want other immortals to laugh at Zhou? Golden Taoist was only one step away from becoming an immortal, the Transcendence Tribulation stage cultivator who was closest to becoming an immortal in the current Zhou world. He claimed to be the true lineage of Zhou and liked to show off his status. Whenever there was a fight, he would appear and mediate the conflict. With the involvement of Golden Taoist, Yuan Shang had no choice but to back down. Chapter 399, Old Friends in Their Youth. The continent of Zhou was home to a diverse array of powers, represented mainly by the righteous presided over by Yuan Shang, the demon path led by Li Wu, and the neutral factions embodied by Jindao people. It was an eclectic mix of all sorts. Zhang Li could clearly sense that in Zhou of this time, the lives of cultivators and mortals alike were cheap. The righteous sought to uphold justice, but the demon path's influence was formidable, and there were always meddlesome individuals stirring the pot. The Jindao people seemed to think deaths were just deaths, there was no need to hold grudges over millions of lives. Using his divine sense, Zhang Li saw two sects spilling blood over a spirit stone mine, staining the rich veins with crimson. The strong preyed on the weak, bulgars took advantage of the chaos and such cases were far too common. Tens of robberies took place at the same time, most of them occurring on official roads. In this era, the escort bureau was a profitable business but also a dangerous one, with a horrifying mortality rate. There were also sects devoted to the immortals of the immortal realm. Due to philosophical differences, they waged war against another sect. Neither party was willing to give ground, and both vowed to fight to the death. Just as immortal Chang Kun predicted, the past Zhou was fraught with overt and covert strife. The current Zhou is vastly different. The only solace for Zhang Li was the Great Zhou. Although it lacked the justice of Jiji's rule, it stood out amongst the empires, nations, and sects like a crane among chickens. Yuan Shang returned to the mysterious heaven sect disheartened and sullen. The constant struggle between righteousness and the demonic had worn him thin. The demon path always found a weakness to exploit in the righteous. If only I could be more patient and become an immortal, then might I gain some sway. No, merely becoming an earth immortal won't do, Yuan Shang lamented. Similar disputes exist in the immortal realm. The tussle between righteousness and the demonic had a long-standing history and no one could do anything about it. Are you Yuan Shang? A figure greeted Yuan Shang with a fist and palm salute. Yuan Shang was taken aback. The figure had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. He recognized all the cultivators at the Transcendence Tribulation stage, but this person was unfamiliar. Who could they be? Yuan Shang could not discern the depth of this person's cultivation. A heavenly immortal descended from the immortal realm. There was plenty of interaction between Zhou and the immortal realm, and it wasn't rare for traveling immortals to descend from above. Who are you? Yuan Shang was on guard. Having just fought Li Wu, he wondered whether this figure was a reinforcement called by Li Wu from the immortal realm intending to teach him a lesson. Zhang Li smiled. I'm not at liberty to reveal my name or my identity. I'm merely here to greet the senior. Yuan Shang became additionally wary of Zhang Li's words. Zhang Li, however, did not pay it any mind and disappeared, heading for Mount Sumeru. Yuan Shang was left in a state of confusion. He felt no hostility from Zhang Li so chose to forget about him. He returned to the Zhantian sect. There awaited even more cultivators, their faces etched with agony and pleading for the sect master to uphold justice. Mount Sumeru was wreathed in mist and clouds. As they approached, they could faintly hear the recitation of scripture. The novices diligently paid their respects to the Buddha, oblivious to the outside world. Funny that the cultivators in JoJo are divided into the paths of righteousness and demon. We Buddhists also have similar disputes. Long Eyebrow Buddha, sitting at the mountaintop and squinting at the sky where 3 cultivators at the Transcendence Tribulation stage were fighting, gave a resigned shake of his head and chuckled. The Long Eyebrow Buddha was the master of Mount Sumeru during this time. Do tell, Chong Kun Immortal, sitting across from the Buddha, was intrigued by the topic. The Buddhists of the immortal realm preferred solitude and seldom interacted with others, leaving him with scarce opportunities to learn about Buddhism. The Chong Kun Immortal of this era looked young and handsome, appearing to be in his 20s or early 30s. The Buddhists have disputes between Theravada and Mahayana teachings. Theravada Buddhists believe in personal salvation, while Mahayana Buddhists advocate for the salvation of both self and others. Buddhists have debated this issue for a long time. Most Buddhas advocate for Theravada, believing that they have not achieved self-liberation and have yet to witness the chaos of the world and the suffering of samsara. How could they rescue others when they themselves have not been saved? A minority of Buddhas advocate for Mahayana, believing that not only does saving others equate to saving oneself, but we must also eradicate our worldly desires and distractions, liberate ourselves from the red dust, do everything we can to assist all living beings. I really don't know much more. Even the Buddha did not come to a conclusion regarding this. It touches the very foundation of Buddhism and shakes its roots. It's not something a Transcendence Tribulation stage cultivator like myself can meddle in. Have some tea. A young novice monk on the side served tea, his movements as smooth and fluid as floating clouds and flowing water. Allow me to introduce, this is my successor in the Peacock Country, Chin Shi, his secular name. He has inherited the Buddha fruit of Sumeru, making him more suitable to be the master of Mount Sumeru. After my ascension, he will be my successor. His cultivation has made good progress. He's already at the body integration realm, the ever-gentle immortal Chong Kun commented. I have heard of you. You're the longest living immortal in JoJo, the young novice monk looked at immortal Chong Kun excitedly. After all, with limited talent, I wouldn't be able to accomplish much even in the immortal realm. It's better to return to JoJo and live freely, said the immortal. That's not what I meant, said the young novice monk, blushing. Haha, just joking, don't take it seriously, immortal Chong Kun burst into laughter. Zhang Li, observing from the dark, was puzzled. The immortal Chong Kun of this era seemed younger and more cheerful. I see your aura is in harmony, long eyebrow, and there's a hint of Buddha light. You must be about to become an immortal. I'm no match for Jin Dao Ren. He should be the first to become an immortal, and I'm right behind him, said Long Eyebrow Buddha as he stared at the Ascension stairway. He was a little bit closer to becoming an immortal. The closer he got, the more he was aware of the existence of the Ascension stairway and understood how mighty it was. The Ascension stairway was forged by countless heavenly immortals, integrating a great deal of wisdom from the immortal realm. It embodies many grand laws including spatial, temporal, cause and effect, yin and yang. Whether it's you or I, or even higher level heavenly immortals, they are all amazed at its brilliance and complexity. As far as I know, no immortal has been able to completely understand the content of the Ascension stairway. Why did the immortal realm create the Ascension stairway? I've been wanting to ask this. You can't say it's to allow more people to become immortals. There aren't that many immortals descending to the lower realms to spread the word, asked the Long Eyebrow Buddha. Even if an immortal comes to JoJo, it's mainly for casual fun, comprehending the red dust, and occasionally leaving a legacy. This hardly affects the overall JoJo. If this is the case for JoJo, the other worlds should not receive much assistance from the immortal realm, said the Buddha. There's a lot I don't know about this matter. My master once said, the more worlds the immortal realm controls, the stronger the immortal realm becomes, immortal Chong Kun whispered. Zhang Li, watching the young novice monk stand nearby, was filled with mixed emotions. The young monk's expression varied from agony, hesitation, and nostalgia to finally settling on a gentle smile. The novice monk is the Long Eyebrow Buddha of 9,000 years ago. Zhang Li returned to the Red Dust Pure Land, bypassed the sect protection array, past the immortal peach tree, and came to the tomb where the Red Dust Fairy was buried. The Red Dust Fairy looked as beautiful as she did 9,000 years later, her eyes gently closed, as if she was merely taking a nap and could wake up at any moment. At this moment, the real Red Dust Fairy had passed away and consciousness hadn't awakened within the body yet. Zhang Li senses something, his head shot up and he darted into the sky. The giant hand that had torn the Waigu world apart now reached for Jojo. This time, Zhang Li was determined to identify the mysterious owner of this hand. Chapter 400. The Master of the Big Hand. Additional update. This was just another ordinary day in the 9 states. Those who were intent on burning, killing, looting, were still doing so, while those seeking justice were still fighting for it. All the cultivators acted according to the righteousness in their hearts, adhering to their Taoist beliefs, and getting stronger through various means. Suddenly, all cultivators staggered, looking into the sky in terror. A large hand, shimmering with runic landforms, broke through the broken void, dripping with blood as it reached for the 9 states. The cultivators had no idea what this hand was intending to do. Cultivators at the Transcendence Tribulation stage glared furiously. The young cultivators were ignorant, unaware of where the ladder to the immortal realm was located. Did they not know? Although one at the Transcendence Tribulation stage could not see the ladder, they could vaguely sense its presence. The big hand was clearly trying to sever the ladder to ascend to the immortal realm. Blocking the path of immortality was a grudge on par with killing one's parents, stealing someone's spouse, or even worse. The cultivators at the Transcendence Tribulation stage had had enough. Putting aside the effects of their actions on the 9 states, they began to make their move, determined to stop this hand in its tracks. This hand, which had destroyed countless ladders to ascendance in many worlds, had never faced such fierce resistance. No other world had the potential or abundance of cultivators that the 9 states had. A new immortal emerged in the 9 states every 100 years on average, long surpassing any other world. Not to mention, countless immortals had set up their Taoist traditions in the 9 states, sparking battles for supremacy. Many immortals privately referred to the 9 states as the mini-immortal realm, indicating its significance. At this time, there was no distinction between the way of righteousness or the demi-world. Even the neutral cultivators did not take a peacemaking attitude. This big hand had touched the interests of all the cultivators. Buddha's death palm, Ruyi gourd, Tao Yin Yang transformation. The saint says, think thrice before you act. Brahma tower. 5-colored divine light, Mount Heshan's stone. Great demon's sky supporting staff. Many Transcendence Tribulation stage cultivators acted simultaneously, ignoring the harm they were causing to their own lives. They kept pulling out every trick in the book, attempting to stop the big hand at whatever cost. However, it was useless. The big hand was unshakable. Even the impact of immortal artifacts could not slow it down. The gap between their cultivation and that of the big hand was overwhelming, leading to despair. Ancestor, why won't you let me use the yin-yang heaven seal? The sect master of the Tao sect was shocked, unable to understand the actions of the immortal elder. The immortal elder gently shook his head and used his cultivation to forcibly suppress the sect master's hand. This is for your own good. Our kind has its support in the immortal realm. Whoever dares to block our path to immortality, state your name. The elder ancestors of the immortal realm will never let you off. If this grudge is not avenged, I swear that I would no longer be a man. The cultivators at the Transcendence Tribulation stage roared. They had been through countless life and death trials, but none were as disgraceful as today. Cultivation. If they can't reach immortality, what is the point of cultivating at all? Jin Dao's eyes were streaming with blood. He was on the cusp of ascension to immortality. How did this catastrophe occur at such a crucial moment? This was even more unbearable than death itself. The master of the big hand seems to be injured and bleeding more than when he was in Wei Gu's world. Just like in Wei's world, the palm of the big hand was flashing bright with runes interacting with the ladder of ascendance, causing it to dissipate without a trace. The runes did not contain any elements related to the law of time, and the part of the ladder related to the law of time was preserved. The big hand brutally pulverized the remnants of the ladder related to the law of time into dust, disappearing completely. No wonder most of the pieces of the immortality ladder I obtained were related to time. Zhang Li reached an epiphany. The part of the ladder related to the law of time was not easy to destroy and required 2 steps. In the haste, the big hand might have overlooked something, allowing a portion of the ladder fragments to be preserved. Zhang Li tore through the broken void. He finally saw who the master of the big hand was, and it sent chills down his spine. The ancestral Taoist. It was the ancestral Taoist who shattered the ladder to immortality. The ancestral Taoist was enormous, spanning the size of 2 states, akin to a gigantic figure who opened the heavens and forged the earth. Yet this giant was in a horrific state, severely injured. One hand was pressing against his chest, protecting some cultivators with an inexhaustible supply of mana, preventing them from being torn apart by the void. This crude method caused damage to the consciousness of the cultivators, and they were likely to lose their memories. His other hand emanated an array of bright runes. He was using this hand to shatter the ladder to ascension across the 10,000 realms. His blood spilled across the void, his eyes vacant, blind, his consciousness hub ruptured, and hence unable to harness his divine sense. Such injuries were irreparable, death was inevitable. But what surprised Zhang Li even more was what followed. Countless heavenly demons from the extra-dimensional realm were chasing after the ancestral Taoist, hell-bent on witnessing the Taoist's death. The Taoist sure lives up to his name, bearing such heavy injuries and still managing to hold up till now. Silently completed the 3 corpses severance and the 3 corpses into one, which threw us off his actual strength. He shattered the ladder to ascension across the 10,000 realms, trying to prevent us from finding the location of these realms. But what's the use? We followed him all the way here and remembered the location of the world. Though the world is constantly moving, as long as we return quickly and record the position formula, all his efforts will be futile. All these extra-dimensional heavenly demons were clear-headed, indicating that they started as heavenly immortals. The heavenly demons were overjoyed. Similar to a hunter's delight in killing swift lions, they also enjoyed killing the strong. Besides, killing the Taoist was a major contribution, with countless rewards. It seemed as if ancestral Taoist had heard the whispers of the extra-dimension heavenly demons. Suddenly, he pulled back, his rune-flashing hand crushed all the heavenly demons. Consequently, even the world coordinates remembered by the heavenly demons disappeared. The ancestral Taoist's mouth was opening and closing, but he could not make a sound. He seemed to be laughing, or perhaps crying. Staggering, he crossed the void to the next and final world. His hand smashed the last immortality ladder and his body floated in the universe, causing the myriad of stars to alter their paths. Using the last of his strength, he inscribed a stele and then transformed his body into a continent, providing a place for these cultivators he had brought back from the immortal realm to live. Zhang Li came to the ancestral Taoist side, remaining silent. The extra-dimension heavenly demons were short-sighted and couldn't figure out the ancestral Taoist's real condition, but Zhang Li could. He was already dead before he arrived in the 9 states. The fact that the Taoist could still move was due to his sheer willpower. It was hard to imagine that the Taoist was powerful enough to crush countless extra-dimension heavenly demons and the ladder of ascension just by sheer willpower. But, the Taoist still died. The Taoist sensed someone's arrival. His body instinctively thought it was an extra-dimension heavenly demon. He tried to reach out, but he had no strength left. He used his divine sense and saw Zhang Li. It was as if he came back to life. He was immensely excited. Who are you? You are from the future. There are cultivators like you in the future. You are stronger than me. There is still hope. Everything still has hope. The Taoist's divine sense stuttered and reached out to Zhang Li. Feels relieved after seeing Zhang Li, and his soul finally departed. Although Zhang Li had never met the Taoist, his heart sank when he saw him in such a state. Zhang Li picked up the stele that the Taoist had inscribed in his dying moments. He had seen this stone monument when he first arrived in the Mingjiang world. But at the time, the stele was damaged, and he could only see part of the content. Finally, Zhang Li saw the complete stele.